Luo Chengfeng was thoughtful and did not refute Lin Xiaoyuan's words. He was just more curious about the mysterious Wugu market. When he left, the Wugu market had not yet appeared. He did not expect that when he came back, he found that it was already a huge market, and it was also highly respected by his own sect master. At the same time, he also became a little curious about the master of the Wugu. Lin Xiaoyuan calmly stood up and arranged. Chengfeng, you are responsible for the situation in the sect during this period. Try to gather forces and be vigilant about all aspects. I will go to the Wugu. Contact me immediately if there is anything. Wugu. In a hidden cave, Zhou Daocheng sat cross-legged on a brown cushion with his eyes slightly closed. The surrounding stone walls were engraved with earth-yellow array patterns. Various earth-attributed materials were placed around his body. The rich spiritual energy followed the surrounding array and passed into the cave, making it full of earth-attributed spiritual energy. In front of him, there was also a lavender box. In front of him was a delicate green stove, in which was inserted a calming sandalwood incense, from which curling green smoke came out. After a while, Zhou Daocheng opened his eyes, and a gleam of light shot out of his eyes. At this moment, he had adjusted his state to the best and was able to start breaking through the foundation. As the spell was cast, a yellowish-brown aura began to appear all over his body, and the aura was attracted, flowing and gathering along the meridians in the body, and all gathered in one place. To break through the foundation, the aura in the body needs to be compressed, which has great requirements for the meridians, but Zhou Daocheng still has confidence in his heart. After all, his meridians and mana are nurtured by the Wutu Kun Yu Gong, which is much stronger than that of ordinary qi refining 9-level cultivators. And with the assistance of the foundation building pill, the probability of success is very high. But even so, Zhou Daocheng still dared not be careless, and immersed himself in the breakthrough, compressing the mana in his body. Compared with the true qi of the foundation building strongman, the spiritual energy of the qi refining period has a huge qualitative change. Once the compression is completed, the true qi will warm the body, realize the leap of life, and the lifespan will exceed 200 years. Zhou Daocheng compressed the spiritual energy in his body bit by bit according to the experience left by the Zhou family predecessors. The process was extremely slow, and it even felt more difficult than the record in the inheritance. This is also normal. Most of the Zhou family predecessors practiced only the second-level lower grade, and the spiritual energy in their bodies was far less than Zhou Daocheng. Including the eldest brother Zhou Daobai, although he is already a leader in the 9th level of qi refining, and he is also a second-level spiritual root cultivator, but compared with Zhou Daocheng's spiritual energy strength, it is still far inferior. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng's process of compressing spiritual energy is more difficult, but once the compression is successful, the true qi he possesses will be more powerful. The compression process lasted for 2 months. All the Wu Earth spiritual energy in the body was compressed to a point, almost condensing into liquid. Now, it has come to the most critical point, condensing qi into liquid. Although the true qi is also called qi, it actually appears in the form of liquid in the body of a cultivator, which means that the spiritual energy is compressed to the extreme, so that the body can accommodate more qi. At this time, Zhou Daocheng cast a spell, and the lavender foundation building pill flew out of the box and was swallowed directly into the mouth under the drive of the spiritual energy. After a few breaths, the rich medicinal power began to play a role in the body. First, the extremely huge spiritual energy instantly filled every meridian in the body, even several times more than Zhou Daocheng's own spiritual energy. Moreover, the medicinal power will continue to drive the spiritual energy, condense into true qi in a short time, and make the spiritual energy close to liquid more rich and heavy, so that a new round of compression can be carried out. The huge energy condensed together, like the mist-like spiritual energy, is completing the last step of transformation. Zhou Daocheng gritted his teeth and urged all the spiritual energy in his body. This step became particularly smooth with the help of the foundation building pill. There are 3 difficulties in building the foundation. The difficulty lies in the amount of spiritual energy, the degree of compression, and the violent degree of spiritual energy during compression. However, the foundation building pill can perfectly solve these problems. It can not only provide a large amount of pure spiritual energy, but also help compress and drive the spiritual energy of the whole body. Finally, it can use the power of the medicine to make the spiritual energy in the body become gentle during the compression process. The next process is relatively stable. With the appearance of the first ray of liquid true energy, a chain reaction has also occurred. Like a whale swallowing water, after the first ray of true energy appears, the rest of the spiritual energy is also quickly condensed into liquid and stored in the meridians of the body, forming a group of light yellow crystal liquid. The spiritual energy that fills the whole body, after extreme compression, is only less than 1/20 of the original, but the concentration of the spiritual energy is several times the original. It's done. Zhou Daocheng showed a happy smile on his face, but he did not leave the cave immediately, but began to stabilize his realm, absorb more spiritual energy, and make the amount of true energy even larger. At the same time, it also drives the true energy in the body to continuously flow in his own meridians, warming the meridians and physique, so as to have a stronger body. After about a month of nurturing, his physical fitness completely improved from the 9th level of qi refining to the level of a foundation establishment cultivator. At this moment, Zhou Daocheng could clearly feel that his own strength had been greatly enhanced, his body's toughness had been greatly improved, and even his lifespan had increased a lot. And more importantly, compared to other foundation establishment cultivators, his lifespan seemed to be longer. Most foundation building masters have a lifespan of up to 200 years, but most people should not live to 200 years old, because fighting will leave some hidden injuries, which will lead to a decline in lifespan. Therefore, most foundation building cultivators can live to 180 to 190 years old. Only by taking some elixirs or natural treasures that increase lifespan can they barely live to about 200 years old. However, Zhou Daocheng found that because of his practice of Wutu Kun Yu Gong, his lifespan increased slightly, about 220 years old. Zhou Daocheng's face showed surprise. Don't underestimate these 20 years. This may change the fate of a cultivator, and even the fate of a family. In the world of immortal cultivation, any means of increasing lifespan is extremely precious, let alone directly increasing it by 20 years. It is enough to see how great the value and role of Wutu Kun Yu Gong is. If it is the main practice of a family, every foundation building master can live 20 years longer, then the significance it brings is extraordinary. Zhou Daocheng has made up his mind that in the future, if there are any clan members with earth-attributed spiritual roots in the family, they can be allowed to practice the Wutu Kun Yu Gong. But there is a prerequisite, that is, when the Zhou family has enough strength, they can start to do this on a large scale. Once it is known that a small family possesses a set of third-level skills, it will inevitably lead to devastating disasters. Therefore, these matters need to be considered in the long term. After Zhou Daocheng completed his breakthrough and consolidated his cultivation, he pushed open the retreat room and walked out. Outside the retreat, there were already two figures waiting here. It was Zhou Daobai and Xie Zhouhei who had noticed someone breaking through and rushed over immediately. With the help of the elixir, Zhou Daobai successfully broke through the second level of the foundation building. After feeling Zhou Daocheng's breakthrough aura, he hurried over to protect the road. Feeling Zhou Daocheng's powerful aura, Zhou Daobai couldn't help but smile, and his heart was full of emotions. The Zhou family has gone through many hardships over the past few years, experienced so many disasters, and almost faced the demise of the family, but in the end they managed to survive and reach new heights. As the leaders of the Dao generation of the Zhou family, they are the backbone of the entire Zhou family, and now they can finally stand up straight. For a moment, Zhou Daobai's eyes were slightly red, but he still covered it up well and congratulated with a smile. Congratulations, senior, for successfully breaking through the foundation building and adding foundation to our Wugyufang city. Xie Zhouhei also congratulated. Senior Wu Jiyu, congratulations, now we have 3 strong foundation builders, we can be considered a not weak force. Zhou Daocheng smiled and returned the greeting, saying, you two fellow Taoists, there is no need to be polite. We are both in the same realm. You two can just call me fellow Taoist. The word, senior, carries too much weight. Haha, okay, then let's call you fellow Taoist, but I don't know what your last name is. Xie Zhouhei asked, cupping his hands. Zhou Daocheng and his eldest brother looked at each other and said with a smile, we are from the same family as fellow Taoist Zhou, and my surname is also Zhou. It's really hard to call them from now on. The two fellow Taoists Zhou can't tell the difference now. Xie Zhouhei smiled and scratched his head, obviously not paying attention to the relationship between Zhou Daocheng and Zhou Daobai. In fact, although Xie Zhouhei is mature and sophisticated, he has a relatively forthright and pure personality and does not care too much about these details. On the contrary, Wei Hanshan, who was thoughtful and scheming, had already noticed something unusual and discovered that the relationship between Zhou Daocheng and the Zhou family was unusual. It's just that this wise old man never talked about it and kept it in his heart. Zhou Daocheng didn't care much about the title. but in order to facilitate future communication, he still smiled and said, "You don't have to call me fellow Taoist Joe, just call me fellow Taoist Wugu, which can be considered as the name of the Lord of Wugu." Head. Well, let's call fellow Taoist the Lord of Fog Valley. After all, etiquette cannot be messed up. Xie Zhouhei was still very measured and took the initiative to elevate Zhou Daocheng's status. Zhou Daocheng didn't say much. As the leader of a party, he could laugh and joke in private, but outside he needed authority to secure his position. "By the way, how are things going these days?" Zhou Daocheng asked. Zhou Daobai's eyes were calm and he said, "It's still the same as before. The number of second-level monsters has increased a lot. However, with Taoist Xie and I working together to drive them away, there is not much of a threat. As for Wugyufang City, it is still running in an orderly manner. In all aspects, everything is moving in a good direction, eh?" Zhou Daocheng nodded. "As long as everything is rising steadily, it is worth being happy. As for the threat of monsters, it will no longer be a threat soon." After Zhou Daocheng successfully broke through, he had 3 strong foundation-building experts, plus 2 sets of spirit puppet formations, and he could easily surround and kill the second-level monsters. Other forces often need to spend a long time searching for traces of second-level monsters in the wild environment before they can finally round them up. But around Foggy Valley, it is much easier to hunt down the second-level monsters, because there are really not a few in them and they can be found easily, which is also an advantage. Xie Zhouhei also said, "As well as the things you arranged before retreating, I have also arranged them. The first batch of monks who practiced Xuanian body refining technique have been sent to the place of gathering yin, and now they have been practicing for a while. Okay, you continue to be responsible for this matter. If Wu Jiyu wants to become a powerful force, the cultivation of strong people is indispensable." As the most powerful monks in Foggy Valley, the 3 of them also had some discussions about the development and future of Foggy Valley. Half a day later, Zhou Daobai and Xie Zhouhei returned to the cave respectively. However, Zhou Daocheng felt something. He looked in the direction of Fengxi and murmured to himself, "It seems that some old friends have arrived, and there are more than one. I have to go and have a look." Stepping forward, we arrived at Wugyufang City, where there were more and more shops and restaurants, and the sounds of sales and shouts were endless, highlighting the noisy and prosperous atmosphere. Zhou Daocheng came to a restaurant, walked up to the second floor with familiarity, pushed the door and walked into a private room. There were 2 people sitting inside. They were both strong foundation builders and old acquaintances. "Fellow Taoist Lin, fellow Taoist Qin, we haven't seen each other for a long time. I didn't expect you 2 to visit at the same time. It really surprised me." Zhou Daocheng said hello with a smile. The visitors were none other than Lin Xiaoyuan, the leader of the Disha sect, and Qin Chengyu, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect. Lin Xiaoyuan stroked his beard. "I didn't expect that I would meet the leader of the Spirit Snake sect here. It's better to hear about it than to see him. He is indeed the best among people. Fellow Taoist Lin, thank you very much. I have heard the name of the Disha sect master for a long time." Both of them were the masters of a certain force, so they naturally exchanged polite words with each other. However, Zhou Daocheng could tell that the 2 of them were not very familiar with each other. They probably just met by chance in the market, and they waited here together out of politeness. However, when Qin Chengyu greeted Zhou Daocheng, he was obviously much more familiar with him. "Little friend, long time no see. I didn't expect that after only a few years, you have become the master of a market. Tisk tisk, the title of the Lord of Fog Valley is really enviable. And your strength. Ha ha ha, it seems that I can't call you little friend, it should be Daoyu." The leader of the Spirit Snake sect is still cheerful, with a little dignity of an elder, which is also the straightforwardness of a young man. Zhou Daocheng touched his nose and smiled, saying, "Senior Qin, please forgive me, it's just messing around. Senior, you are so helpful to me, I have to thank you." Seeing the tone of the 2 people's conversation, Lin Xiaoyuan's face changed slightly. This was obviously not a communication between strangers, but a conversation between old friends for many years. This made him feel a sense of crisis. The strength of Fog Valley is already strong enough. If a leader of the Spirit Snake sect is added, it will be very troublesome. But considering what to talk about next, Lin Xiaoyuan still put his mind at ease for the time being. Perhaps facing the next disaster, more people are still good. After the 3 of them exchanged pleasantries, they got down to business. Zhou Daocheng asked, "Since the 2 senior colleagues are here, they must have something important to discuss, right?" Qin Chengyu was silent for a moment and said, before you came, I had already talked with fellow Taoist Lin. The things that fellow Taoist Lin and I want to talk to you about should be the same thing. Oh, the same thing? Zhou Daocheng asked in surprise, wondering in his heart, what could make the masters of the Disha sect and the Spirit Snake sect find him at the same time? Obviously, this must not be a private matter, but a public matter related to the overall situation. After thinking about it for a few seconds, Zhou Daocheng vaguely guessed something and asked tentatively, is it related to Qingshan sect? Good. Qin Changyu, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect, nodded and then explained the general situation, while Lin Xiaoyuan also made some additions. After Zhou Daocheng finished listening, he had a general understanding of the situation, and his expression became serious. He lowered his head and thought for a long time, carefully analyzing the pros and cons. The Wang family of Qianyan Mountain turned against the enemy and killed a real person from the Qingshan Zongzi mansion. The Qingshan sect was defeated in the frontal battlefield and was forced to hand over 8,000 miles of territory for peace. Qingshan sect and Lingding sect stopped and turned to target the Qianyanshan Wang family. Any piece of news was earth-shattering, and Zhou Daocheng was extremely surprised and shocked. He really didn't expect that the situation would develop in this direction. He couldn't help frowning and wondering, why did the Wang family of Qianyanshan do this? Is your brain flooded? Ahem, little friend, watch your words. Qin Changyu twitched the corner of his mouth and couldn't help but remind him, but the behavior of the Wang family is indeed a bit strange. What benefit does it have for them to join forces with the Lingding sect for no reason? Lin Xiaoyuan thought for a moment and came up with an answer. Any decision is based on interests. It must be profitable, so they will do this. Zhou Daocheng and Qin Changyu also nodded. The Wang family must not be stupid. They must have their own little thoughts, but they haven't revealed them yet. After Zhou Daocheng pondered for a moment, he still asked, the two fellow Taoists who came here this time want to form an alliance with me, Wugu, to jointly deal with the disaster that may happen next. Lin Xiaoyuan nodded and said, yes, the Qingshan sect has turned its spearhead against the Wang family, and the Wang family's Qianyan Mountain is close to the east, and it is likely to affect us. After finishing speaking, Qin Changyu added another sentence, saying, moreover, I heard from the grapevine that the Wang family has begun to move to the east. After hearing this, the expressions of the other two people changed slightly. This is not a good thing. Whether it is the threat posed by the Qingshan sect or the threat posed by the Qianyan Mountain Wang family, it is fatal to the foundation building forces. If you get involved in their disputes, it is very likely that there will be no bones left, there will be no chance to struggle, and many years of inheritance will be destroyed in one fell swoop. Moreover, Qin Changyu's face was particularly ugly, because the location of the Spirit Snake sect was exactly in the direction of the Wang family's retreat. If the Wang family retreats all the way, it is very likely that the Spirit Snake sect will be crushed to death. This is simply an unreasonable disaster, but there is nowhere to complain, so the leader of the Spirit Snake sect is so anxious. In fact, the situation in Wugyufang City and Disha sect is not good either. The three parties are all nearby, and the distance is not very far. Whenever a war breaks out, it will inevitably affect them. Qin Changyu sighed and said, so I came to see my friend this time just to talk about forming an alliance. If the situation changes suddenly in the future, if we can unite together, the probability of survival will be greater. Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly. Strength is the foundation, but with enough strength, there are many paths that can be chosen. Enter. Being able to rely on many foundation building experts to negotiate terms with the Qingshan sect or the Wang family ensures that they occupy a certain position in the ensuing chaos and will not be completely trampled to death. Retreat. They can also work together to hide in the eastern Great Wilderness or the 100 Insect Poison Swamp, and try to carve out a living place in that area where there are no monks. No matter which method is used, as long as the strength is strong enough, there will definitely be no problem in surviving. Even taking a step back, it would be a good choice for several forces to unite and go to other areas for cultivating immortals together. They can also use their strong strength to seize the territory of other forces. And this is also the purpose of Lin Xiaoyuan and Qin Changyu's visit this time. Zhou Daocheng silently looked at the two people in front of him, weighing the strength of the three parties. The Spirit Snake sect has a strong foundation builder and two second-level monsters, which are very powerful. The Disha sect has two strong foundation building experts and a second-level Taoist puppet. It has a profound foundation and is also a relatively powerful foundation building force. And Wugu now also has more than 3 foundation building combat powers, which is no weaker than these two. If you add them all up, you will have a dozen foundation building experts, which will be enough to deal with many difficulties. Thinking of this, Zhou Daocheng already had an idea in his heart. But before that, he still looked at Lin Xiaoyuan and asked a question. Fellow Taoist Lin, there is something I don't know whether to ask or not. Lin Xiaoyuan raised his eyebrows and said, but it doesn't matter. As the strongest sect among the 5 foundation building forces in Baihifeng City, why don't you form an alliance with the other 4 sects and instead come to me, Wu Jiyu? Hearing this, Lin Xiaoyuan was silent for a moment, and then explained, there are many reasons to consider, and the strength of the 4 of them is not as strong as you think. Can you tell me more specifically? Zhou Daocheng continued to inquire deeply, without giving the other party a chance to fish in troubled waters. After all, if they really want to form an alliance, they must know the details. This is not a trivial matter. It is related to the rise and fall of the sect family and deserves to be treated seriously by everyone. Knowing that he could not escape, Lin Xiaoyuan sighed and said, first of all, it is a matter of strength. In this war of Qingshan sect, Xian Pavilion and Baihua Pavilion each lost a strong foundation builder, and their strength is not as good as before. Zhou Daocheng was slightly stunned. He didn't expect the battlefield to be so fierce. 2 foundation building experts died in Baihifeng City alone. The situation in Xian Pavilion should be relatively good. After all, there is a strong foundation builder hidden in the secret, who is Aunt Qin Mu's uncle. This person has been to Foggy Valley before. With his presence, Xian Pavilion should be able to stabilize the situation. However, after Baihua Pavilion loses its foundation building powerhouse, it is very likely that it will be destroyed directly, and there will never be a chance to stand up again. Lin Xiaoyuan continued. Moreover, after the emergence of Wugyufeng City, the income of Baihifeng City is not as good as before. The Jin sect has obvious intention to withdraw, and the relationship has become increasingly estranged. So strictly speaking, in Baihifeng City today, there are only 3 forces left. Disha sect, Xian Pavilion, and Fire Dragon sect. Their strength is not as good as before. This is the first time Zhou Daocheng has heard of this news, but since Lin Xiaoyuan said it, there is a high probability that it is not nonsense, and it is probably something that has been made clear. Baihifeng City is indeed in decline. Although monks continue to come, the geographical location of Baihifeng City is destined to be inferior to Wugu. In the long-term competition, it will only become more and more at a disadvantage. There are even many times when the monks and forces who migrate to the eastern border will only stay in Baihifeng City temporarily, but after understanding the situation clearly, they will come to Wugyufeng City to develop. It is really sad that a small market has been transformed into a resting place. Speaking of this, Lin Xiaoyuan even looked at Zhou Daocheng with some resentment. Baihifeng City has fallen to what it is now, but it is all thanks to Wugyufeng City. Otherwise, under the influence of the troubled times, a large number of monks came, and Baihifeng City must be the one who made a lot of money. But Lin Xiaoyuan no longer has high hopes for the competition between the 2 major cities. For Baihifeng City, the only chance is to directly deal with Xinfeng City when Wugyufeng City was first established. Unfortunately, Lin Xiaoyuan and the leader of the Jin sect failed, and their chance of winning was ruined by the second-level high-grade formation. After that, the competition among the hunting teams during the Qi refining period was suppressed by formations, magic weapons, spiritual beasts, etc., and they also fell into a disadvantage. Until now, Baihifeng City has suffered heavy losses due to the Qingshan sect's war, and even the proud number of foundation building experts is gradually falling behind. The decline of Baihifeng City has become an indisputable fact. Lin Xiaoyuan naturally understood it, so he did not choose to stick to Baihifeng City, but began to seek a new way out. Finally, Lin Xiaoyuan sighed and said, the most important point is that the environment and potential of Wugyufeng City must be better after all. Of course, this also includes the potential of you, the Lord of Wugyufeng. Having better abilities is the final choice I made after careful consideration. Zhou Daocheng listened to the flattery calmly, and his expression did not change much. Whether it was true or false, he didn't care too much. After all, he has seen this old man's character several times. His mind is deep and unpredictable, and it is difficult to figure out whether it is good or bad, so it is not suitable for him to believe deeply. And compared to a few words of flattery, Zhou Daocheng still cares more about actual interests. In this case, the 3 of us have tentatively agreed that if an unexpected situation does arise, we will advance and retreat together. Zhou Daocheng said calmly. Lin Xiaoyuan nodded and said, if anyone has any news, you can share your information. Qin Changyu, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect, didn't say anything more and just nodded in agreement. Of course, the three people present actually understood that it was just a verbal discussion and nothing could be done. Only when a situation really arises and interests are entangled, will everyone take it seriously. But such discussions are necessary to express each other's attitudes and prepare for many things. At the same time, it also allowed Zhou Daocheng, who had no information, to know some important information in advance and be able to make some preparations as soon as possible. After the head of the Disha sect left, Zhou Daocheng had an in-depth conversation with Qin Changyu again. There have been no disputes between the two, and their relationship is more harmonious, so they can communicate in depth. Moreover, compared to Lin Xiaoyuan, Zhou Daocheng also trusts the leader of the Spirit Snake sect more. Qin Changyu looked deeply and said, little friend, I came to see you today because I actually have an idea I want to tell you. I want to move the sect's headquarters to around Wugu. Zhou Daocheng was surprised, frowned and asked, such a big deal? Are you so unoptimistic about the situation? Qin Changyu nodded and said, the situation is only one aspect. A real person from the Qingshan sect died, and he died due to the betrayal of his allies. He will never give up. He will definitely fight with the Wang family and cause chaos. As I said just now, if we want to face the chaos that follows, it will not be enough to rely on one or two foundation building experts. If we can unite together, we may have a greater chance of survival. Of course, in addition to trends, more consideration is given to development prospects. Although the area where the Spirit Snake sect is currently located is rich in resources, it is desolate and has inconvenient transportation. If we can change the location for development, it should bring new opportunities. Quote. Zhou Daocheng understood that Qin Changyu's main idea was to find a more suitable area for the Spirit Snake sect to develop. The location where Wugu is located has more abundant cultivation resources, a larger number of monks, and the existence of Wugyufeng City, so it must be more suitable for development. To put it bluntly, Qin Changyu plans to let the Spirit Snake sect rely on Wugyufeng City to develop. However, this matter still requires the consent of Zhou Daocheng, the Lord of Foggy Valley. Otherwise, moving here rashly will easily cause a gap between the two parties. Zhou Daocheng was thinking and weighing the pros and cons of this matter. Naturally, there are benefits. It can further enhance Wugu's strength, and he will be more confident whether facing the ensuing chaos or the invasion of surrounding monsters. Even in the long run, it will be easier to explore the eastern wilderness veins or the 100-insect poison swamp in the future. But the disadvantages also exist, that is, the Spirit Snake sect is very powerful. If there is a conflict or a dispute of interest between the two parties in the future, it is very likely that it will transform from a strong ally to a troublesome opponent. Fellow Taoist Qin, since you plan to move here, have you made plans to move to where? Zhou Daocheng asked a very important question. Lin Xiaoyuan was obviously well prepared and said, to the northeast of Wugyufeng City, where the 9th-level qi refining monks have traveled for about half a month, there is a 2nd-level spiritual vein connecting the 100-insect poison swamp. Zhou Daocheng nodded, feeling relieved. The location is neither too far nor too close, so it won't affect Foggy Valley, but it can still communicate and cooperate with each other, which is a very measured distance. Moreover, the location Qin Changyu chose was in the 100 Insects Poison Swamp, which was a place that few cultivators in the Fog Valley went to. This was different from the development direction of the Fog Valley, and there was a high probability that there would be no conflict of interest. Zhou Daocheng nodded and agreed, okay, since fellow Taoist Qin has made a plan, then I will naturally support it. If you need logistical supplies, just contact me directly. Qin Changyu also nodded gratefully. For a large sect like the Spirit Snake sect, relocating the resident is a very troublesome matter, and a lot of preparations need to be made. The most important point is the supply of basic resources, such as spiritual valleys, elixirs, talismans, residences, etc. After all, they need to ensure that the disciples of the sect have sufficient food and a relatively stable cultivation environment after arriving at the new resident. And these, Zhou Daocheng happened to be able to provide, which also provided great convenience for the Spirit Snake sect. After the two parties agreed, Qin Changyu also returned to the Spirit Snake sect with confidence and began to arrange the relocation of the sect. Zhou Daocheng's task was relatively simple. He only needed to arrange for Wei Hanshan to prepare some basic resources and then provide them to the Spirit Snake sect. As the overall environment became increasingly turbulent, the development of Wugyufeng City was relatively stable. Originally, they planned to attack Chen's family at night with the Disha sect to snatch Tiamu, but looking at the current situation, both sides should not dare to leave their own forces easily, and it is highly likely that they will not be able to go. Therefore, they can only stay in Wugu peacefully, step up the accumulation of resources and strength, and strive to face the chaos in a better state. 3 days later, Zhou Daocheng resumed his daily life and practice, and was busy in the spirit beast garden, and taking care of the spiritual birds and spiritual medicines. Just after feeding the chickens and taking a rest, before wiping the sweat, the communication stone in his arms rang. Wei Hanshin, Senior, a batch of resources have been sent from Balin Lake, and you may need to count them yourself. Zhou Daocheng raised his eyebrows, and immediately agreed, and got up and left the spirit beast garden. If it is a matter of the market, it will naturally be handed over to Wei Hanshin, but Balin Lake belongs to his private property, similar to Tianqi Shanju, so it is necessary to check it in person. When we arrived at the second valley, we could see Qinlai from a distance, as well as a large number of spiritual grains, spiritual fish and other resources around him, piled up like a small mountain. After a simple inquiry, Zhou Daocheng also had a clear understanding of the resources here. This is the harvest of Balin Lake in the past 2 years. Under the management of the old patriarch Zhou Chengyi, many industries have achieved a bumper harvest, so Qinlai was arranged to transport it here for sale. Among them, spiritual rice occupies a large part, and it is all first-level medium-quality spiritual rice, with very good quality, about 8,000 kilograms. For the entire Balin Lake, 8,000 kilograms of spiritual rice is not much. It should be that the great-grandfather Zhou Chengyi left a part and stored it in the underwater cave of Balin Lake, and only a small part was sent here for sale. In addition, there are 20 sets of silk inner armor, more than 50 first-level superior white-scale perch, more than 100 first-level superior green-bearded spiritual shrimps, more than 1,000 kilograms of earth spirit meat mushrooms, and more than 120 first-level superior yellow thorn vines. Silk inner armor is the unique industry of Zhao Yunji's family, but now it has been handed over to the Zhou family. It is produced on a small scale in Balin Lake, and the quantity is not large. However, Zhou Daocheng did not plan to focus on development. After all, the quality of this inner armor is low, only the first level medium quality, and the production process is also very complicated, and the cost effectiveness is not very high. White-scaled perch is a specialty, which does not require too much management. Some can be produced every year, and a part will be left for the tribe to eat, and the rest will be sent to the Fog Valley. The same is true for the green-bearded shrimp. At first, it was only raised in a small pond, but now it has been fully reproduced and thrown into the Balin Lake together. Now the output is not small. However, most of them are only the first level low quality and medium quality, and only a small part of them can reach the first level upper quality, and almost all of them are sent to the Fog Valley. The earth spirit meat mushroom is a crop of underwater caves, a kind of mushroom that grows underground and does not need sunlight. Unexpectedly, the yield is not low, and it has become a very important crop for the Zhou family. The last yellow thorn vine was planted in the valley behind. With a lot of fertilizer, it grew for 2 or 3 years and finally reached the first grade superior quality. If it is all refined into a formation, it should be worth a lot. Zhou Daocheng looked at the full harvest and was in a very good mood. The existence of Balin Lake can provide a lot of basic resources to Wugu, especially spiritual valley and earth spirit meat mushroom, which can be sold as staple food. After all, most of the monks living in Wugu cannot cultivate spiritual fields by themselves, so spiritual rice is a relatively luxurious food, and only a small number of monks can buy it for consumption. Most of the other monks hunted first-grade monsters for food. Although the taste is not bad, it is inevitable that it will be bland over time, and the quality is not as good as the specially planted spiritual rice. Not only ordinary monks, but also the monks under Zhou Daocheng are like this most of the time. So Zhou Daocheng did not sell this batch of spiritual rice in the market, but distributed it privately. First, all the members of the guards and hunting teams under his command can buy a batch of spiritual rice and earth spirit meat mushrooms, and the price is lower than the market price, which is equivalent to a friendly gift to them. Zhou Daocheng is very generous to the monks under his command. After all, they usually work for him and are the closest group of monks. Zhou Daocheng will sell the remaining spiritual rice and earth spirit meat mushrooms directly to Shaodan Pavilion, Wang family, Spirit Snake Sect, Zhou family, and Yuan Zhang and Tang Rong. Shaodan Pavilion and Wang family have more people, so they are the biggest consumers, and they have purchased more than 1,000 kilograms of spiritual rice in total. However, they did not pay spiritual stones, but exchanged them with elixirs and talismans, and both parties took what they needed. The Zhou family naturally did not need to buy. For his own family, Zhou Daocheng would provide spiritual rice every once in a while, and life was not ordinary comfortable. As for Yuan Zhang and his wife, they have now completely settled down in Wugu and have established a family in name. It is said that Tang Rong seems to be pregnant, and the first child of the Yuan family is about to be born. Zhou Daocheng still takes special care of this family born and raised in Wugu. As for the white-scaled sea bass and green-bearded shrimp, Zhou Daocheng did not sell them privately, but sent them to Tianqi Shanju. Today's Tianqi Shanju, the first floor is still a pure tavern, but the second floor is a private room, so it will provide a lot of meals. Zhou Daocheng found a few chefs to specialize in making spiritual meals. And white-scaled sea bass and green-bearded shrimp are the signature dishes here, which are very popular. A large part of the reason is that Wugyufang City is located in the deep mountains and old forests. There are a lot of various meats and wild vegetables, but fish and shrimps are rare, so many monks with spare money are willing to try them. Moreover, the quality of white-scaled sea bass and green-bearded shrimp is very high, and the spiritual energy contained in them is very rich, and they also have other benefits after eating them. Zhou Daocheng personally delivered these fresh fish and shrimp to Tianqi Shanju and stored them in a specially built small ice house. There was also a lot of food stored in the ice house, all from various foods around Wugu Valley. It was rare to come to Fangxi, and Zhou Daocheng took this opportunity to check out the situation here. Rows of buildings are closely arranged, and various shops emerge endlessly, such as elixir shops, spiritual mine pavilions, spiritual rice shops, butcher shops, hotels, taverns, talisman shops, grocery stores, etc. Some larger shops are opened by powerful forces, such as Shaodan Pavilion, Wang Family, Zhou Family, Ling Snake Sect, etc. Moreover, Zhou Daocheng only allowed them to sell elixirs, magic weapons, talismans, and spiritual beasts in the market, avoiding all possible malicious competition. Of course, Zhou Daocheng will also strictly monitor the prices of the items they sell to prevent the situation in Baihifang City and ensure that prices can become balanced. Price. This is the credibility of a city, which needs strong power to maintain, and these small forces are not allowed to change it at will. Including some small shops, which are opened by some small family forces, but they will also be supervised and protected by Wugu. The task of the guard team is not only to expel the troublemakers, but also to supervise the shops and forces in the market. To ensure that fairness and justice can be achieved to a certain extent, the interests of shops can be guaranteed, and the interests of monks can be protected. It is precisely because of Zhou Daocheng's strict rules that the development of Wugu market is unusually stable. Many monks are willing to settle here and rely more and more on this market. And this is exactly what Zhou Daocheng hopes to see. The development of a market is definitely not a matter of fishing in he's. If you just want to make a fortune and leave, and try your best to suppress the shops and monks inside, you will not be able to go far. Just like the former Baihei market, it eventually forced out a Wugu market, and its own development was also greatly affected. Zhou Daocheng would never allow such a thing to happen in Wugu. It is the influence of various factors that makes the current Wugu market so lively, and a large number of monks and forces are willing to stay here. Zhou Daocheng walked slowly on the street, looking at everything in front of him, and his mood was still very good. The more prosperous the market is, the higher his annual income will naturally be. With the support of a large number of spirit stones, his strength will inevitably increase rapidly, so the Wugu market is the foundation for improving his strength. After a round, Zhou Daocheng came to another industry of his own, the slave trading market. Now, in the entire Wugu market, Zhou Daocheng only operates 3 assets. The first is Tianqi Shanju, which is the largest income. It can harvest tens of thousands of spirit stones every year. It is also one of the signature shops in the entire Wugu market. The second is the auction, but it will not be opened on a daily basis. After all, it is not an easy thing to open an auction, and it requires a lot of preparation. The third is the slave trading market. The slave trading market is not entirely operated by Zhou Daocheng alone. If it is a large market, there are many small shops in it, and you can trade freely in it. On the one hand, Zhou Daocheng is the actual controller of the slave trading market. He will tax all transactions. Whether slaves enter the market or leave the market, they must pay a part of the spirit stones. On the other hand, he also runs a slave market, selling and buying some of the better slaves for use within the market. After all, it is a huge market, and there are many places that need people. Generally speaking, slaves who have no talent for cultivation but have good looks and smart brains will be sent to Tianqi Shanju to work. Or, some will be sent to the auction venue to train some service talents for the auction, and those with excellent looks can also be trained to become auctioneers. As for slaves with spiritual roots and certain talents, especially children, Zhou Daocheng will arrange people to collect them. In the world of cultivating immortals, people who can become cultivators are still of great value. If they have 5 spiritual roots, they are the weakest group of talents. They can cultivate, but at most they can only cultivate to the late stage of qi refining. For this kind of people, Zhou Daocheng will specially collect them and teach them the knowledge of planting spiritual medicines and raising spiritual birds, but they are also the simplest knowledge, such as using ganline technique to water, preparing fertilizer liquid, etc. In the future, they can be responsible for the planting of spiritual medicines or the raising of spiritual birds. The best of them can be sent to the spiritual beast garden of the spiritual medicine garden to take care of higher quality spiritual medicines and monsters. Those with weaker talents can take care of ordinary spiritual plants in the future, such as first-level low-grade spiritual grains. Because Zhou Daocheng has discovered that the Wugu market is extremely short of spiritual grains, an important resource, he can completely expand the scale of planting and plant a large number of them around the Wugu. Of course, in addition to these children with weaker talents, there are occasionally cultivators with 4 or 3 spiritual roots. The number is extremely rare. Since the opening of the trading market, only 3 cultivators with 4 spiritual roots and 1 cultivator with 3 spiritual roots have appeared. These 3 cultivators with 4 spiritual roots were fought over by everyone as soon as they appeared, and were finally bought by different forces. Zhou Daocheng also bought one of them with his own strength and sent it directly to the hunting team. Although the talent is not particularly high, if it is cultivated from a young age, it should be able to barely reach the 9th level of qi refining when it is about 50 years old. Moreover, children who have been cultivated from a young age will definitely be more reliable to use, and their loyalty will definitely be higher. As for the child with 3 spiritual roots, it is said that he was found in a village destroyed by evil cultivators and then sent to Wugu market. When he flowed into the slave market, Zhou Daocheng was in seclusion and had no chance to take him down. As a result, he was bought by the Wang family, and became an intern talisman master. Zhou Daocheng was very regretful about this. He lost a cultivator with 3 spiritual roots. If he had cultivated him with all his strength, there would be a certain probability that he would break through the foundation. In the past, the Zhou family often had descendants with 4 spiritual roots and 3 spiritual roots, but in the next few decades, it should be difficult to see them. After all, there are not many people left in the Zhou family now. Most of them are old people and children. The younger generation is not involved in the development of the family. Where do they have time to talk about love? The only one who may reproduce is Zhou Daocheng, who got married early, but there has been no sign of having children. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng also wants to collect a few children with good spiritual roots for the Zhou family to avoid the Zhou family being in a period of transition. This time, he also walked around the slave market and found that there were indeed more and more slaves here, and the quality was gradually improving. Many monks with spiritual roots began to appear. Although there were fewer children with spiritual roots, there were many monks with cultivation. Ignoring all the mortal slaves, Zhou Daocheng focused on the monks, looking for slaves with good quality. It can be seen that some of the cleaner and thinner ones should be people from small families and small forces, who were exterminated when fighting with the enemy and were finally captured. There were also some seriously injured and rough ones, who should be monks who lost in the fight between hunting teams. These people are generally stronger and have good talents. Zhou Daocheng focused on these 2 categories, which are the most likely groups of people to have talents. After a stroll, Zhou Daocheng finally found a pair of slave monks with good quality in his own shop. But he was also a little helpless. He had worked hard to walk around, but in the end, what he was looking for was actually in his own shop. They were a pair of twin sisters, in their early 20s. Their looks were not absolutely beautiful, but they were extremely delicate, and were considered top-notch in the slave market. If they are discovered by cultivators with special hobbies, they will most likely spend a lot of money to buy them. Moreover, the 2 are not weak in strength. They are both at the 5th level of qi refining, which can be regarded as relatively strong in the slave market. Zhou Daocheng asked and found out that they were cultivators in a small family before. The elder sister is Yan Shangping and the younger sister is Yan Shanglin, twins. However, the family was destroyed later. After the two escaped with all their strength, they became independent cultivators and came to the vicinity of Wugyufang City. They joined a hunting team, and then were captured in the fight and sold to the slave market in Wugu. This tortuous experience made even Zhou Daocheng sigh that it was indeed a bad fate. However, looking at the sisters, Zhou Daocheng nodded with satisfaction and murmured to himself, "They have a clean background, good talent and strength, and excellent appearance. If they can marry into the Zhou family, it would be a good choice." Then, Zhou Daocheng directly arranged his men to bring the sisters out. As the boss here, he didn't even need to spend money. However, the two women were obviously frightened and kept curling up in the corner, their eyes full of fear, their faces covered with dirt and tears. The elder sister was more resolute, staring at Zhou Daocheng outside the cage, while protecting her sister tightly, with a touch of heroism between her eyebrows. Zhou Daocheng showed a touch of approval. If he was cowardly and incompetent, he would still need to hesitate for a moment, but if he was a person with a resolute temperament, it would be better. He did not force it, but said, "You two don't have to be nervous. I am from the Zhou family of Wugyufang City. The family has also suffered an attack from powerful monks. Now the talents are withering and fresh blood is urgently needed. If you are willing, you can marry into my Zhou family. If you really don't want to, you can also work in the Zhou family. How about it?" Hearing the voice, the trembling bodies of the two calmed down a little, but they still looked at Zhou Daocheng nervously. Sister Yan Shangping frowned slightly and asked cautiously, "Is she going to marry you?" Zhou Daocheng did not lie to them and shook his head and said, "It's not me. I already have a wife. I'm going to marry my uncle, who is a weapon refiner and has reached the 9th level of qi refining. He will not treat you unfairly." Hearing this, the two women's faces changed slightly at first, but then they became gentler, as if they were weighing it in their hearts. In fact, as far as these two women are concerned, they naturally prefer to marry the young Zhou Daocheng. If it is this man's uncle, he must be much older than them, and they are somewhat unwilling in their hearts. But after hearing the conditions, considering their own conditions and status, it seems that there are not many choices. The two of them thought about it, and the elder sister seemed to want to struggle. Her voice softened a little, and she asked cautiously, "Senior, can I marry your uncle, and my sister marry you as a concubine?" Even in the world of cultivating immortals, it is not a decent thing for sisters to share a husband, so compared to marrying the same person together, it is better to find a better way out for the younger sister. Zhou Daocheng touched his nose. He didn't expect that he was so popular. It seemed that his charm had improved. However, he still chose to refuse this request. "You don't have to think about it. If you are willing, I have other uncles." Hearing this, the two sisters looked at the young man in front of them with a strange look. This scene is indeed a bit strange. How can a younger generation in the family come out to find a Taoist partner for their elders? After being rejected, the elder sister Yan Shangping seemed a little unwilling and wanted to say something again, but was stopped by her younger sister. Sister Yan Shanglin whispered, "Sister, there is no need to say more. Let's agree to the senior. No matter what, it is better than the current situation." Sister Yan Shangping thought about it, sighed helplessly, and agreed. Afterwards, the two supported each other and stood up from the cage with great effort. They bowed to Zhou Daocheng with injuries all over their bodies and said, "I am Yan Shangping, Yan Shanglin, thank you for saving my life." Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly and took the initiative to help the two out. He did not disdain the dirt and injuries on their bodies. After all, he wanted them to marry into the Zhou family and reproduce for the Zhou family. In the end, they would most likely be relatives, so they naturally had to be treated with courtesy. Although there was a high possibility that their status in the Zhou family would not be very high in the future, basic respect must not be lacking. Afterwards, Zhou Daocheng took the two away from the slave market. Looking at the current situation of the two sisters, it was definitely not suitable to take them back to the Zhou family directly. Zhou Daocheng still took them to Tianqi Shanju, and arranged for someone to help them clean up. By the way, he also let them take a bath in the Qingyang medicinal bath, to restore their weak breath a little and recover their physical injuries at the same time. When they appeared again, they were completely refreshed, wearing a simple green gauze dress, with fresh water droplets on their hair and faces. The younger sister Yan Shanglin had a beautiful temperament and looked shy, while the older sister Yan Shangping was more mature and more resolute. Zhou Daocheng nodded with satisfaction, and was quite satisfied with the two of them, so he took the two sisters to the Zhou family's spiritual weapon pavilion. And found Zhou Shuhai who was refining weapons. This pair of sisters was prepared by Zhou Daocheng for Zhou Shuhai. Now there are 8 members of the Zhou family in the spiritual weapon pavilion, 6 of whom are weapon refiners, and 2 are Shou generation members in the late stage of qi refining. Among the 6 weapon refiners, 3 are from the Chong generation, 2 are from the Shou generation, and 1 is from the Dao generation, Zhou Daoqi. Judging from their age, only the uncles from the Shou generation can give birth to descendants for the family. However, among the 4 members of the Shou generation, 3 are over 60 years old, and Zhou Daocheng has to call them uncles. Both their potential and physical fitness have declined significantly, and they are not suitable for remarriage. Only Zhou Shuhai, who is relatively young and has good talent, is the most suitable candidate. In terms of cultivation, after Zhou Daocheng's supply and training of a large number of resources, he has reached the 9th level of qi refining, just like Zhou Daoqi. As for the talent for refining, he is the most talented person in the entire Zhou family, except for Zhou Daoqi, and can already refine a first-level superior magic weapon, surpassing many of the older generation of the family. Now, Zhou Daoqi went to the Yinzhu land to practice, and Zhou Shuhai took over the responsibility of the spiritual weapon pavilion and was responsible for the operation of the shop. In fact, she is the most promising core member of the Zhou family, except for Zhou Daobai, Zhou Daoqi, and Zhou Daocheng. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng is always thinking about his uncle Shuhai. However, when Zhou Shuhai saw the sisters and understood Zhou Daocheng's arrangement, his face suddenly turned pale and he was so angry that he almost wanted to hit someone. You kid. Why don't you do your own thing and think about finding me a wife? Zhou Shuhai was disappointed, but at the same time he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Zhou Daocheng said seriously, Uncle Shuhai, I have no choice. Now the Zhou family is losing talents. Shuzheng and Shuqiang are too old, and the Dao generation is too young. Only you are still in your prime years. You must contribute your own strength to the inheritance of the family. Zhou Shuhai's face darkened and said, I can understand the Shou generation, but the Dao generation has Daobai, Daoqi, and you. Which one is not more suitable than me? Brother Daobai has broken through the foundation and focuses on cultivation. Brother Daoqi is also working hard to study the 2nd-level magic weapon. As for me, I'm already working hard, Zhou Daocheng said seriously. Hearing this, Zhou Shuhai was also deflated. He looked at Zhou Daocheng with a bit of a helpless look in his heart. Thinking back then, when he was still young, he was suppressed by the elders of the Chong generation. He thought that when the Dao generation was born, it would be their turn to be the Shou generation to be the master of the family. Unexpectedly, the family directly skipped the Shou generation and began to be the master of the family by the younger generation of the Dao generation. Even his uncle's marriage was directly arranged. Alas, Daocheng, I also understand your good intentions, but these 2 virgin girls are really. Zhou Daocheng raised his eyebrows and said thoughtfully, Uncle Shuhai, do you like young women too? Quote, ? Quote, that's fine, I'll go and change you a more mature one. Forget it, I'll take you to the scene to choose directly. After all, getting married is a big deal, and you must choose one you like. Quote. Zhou Shuhai's face was full of black lines, seeing that Zhou Daocheng was determined to find him a wife. Finally, he could only sigh helplessly. Forget it, these 2. Seeing that Zhou Shuhai agreed, Zhou Daocheng withdrew his hand and a smile appeared on his face. He smiled and said, then congratulations to Uncle Shuhai, get married as soon as possible, and bring happiness to our Zhou family. Hey, you kid, Zhou Shuhai patted Zhou Daocheng on the shoulder, his eyes showing helplessness and a hint of relief. How could he not understand Zhou Daocheng's intention? The Zhou family is now thriving, with strong foundation builders, a stable development environment, and Zhou Daocheng, the master of the Fog Valley. Everything is moving in a good direction. But there is a very big drawback, that is, no offspring are born. The older generation is almost dead, and the entire family is almost extinct. There will be a long period of blankness next, so how could there be a lack of successors? So, Zhou Daocheng would resort to such a desperate measure and do such an overstepping of authority. Zhou Shuhai was also a reasonable person. After thinking about these things, he also understood the good intentions behind it, and half-heartedly agreed. Moreover, he could see that these 2 women must have been carefully selected, and both their appearance and talent were considered superior. More importantly, this gift was given to 2 women directly, which really made Zhou Shuhai feel very tired. It was really enthusiastic to meet his nephew. Well, Daocheng, I also understand your intentions. I will accept these 2 aunts you found for me. Zhou Daocheng's mouth twitched, and he always felt that this was awkward, but at least the matter was completed, so he didn't care about these details. Okay, then you and your aunt will get acquainted first, and I will hold a wedding for you directly after a while. Quote. After arranging things, the sisters Yan Xiangping and Yan Xianglin stayed. The 2 women who suddenly appeared naturally attracted the attention of other Zhou family members. When they learned that they were the Taoist partners Zhou Daocheng found for Zhou Shuhai, their expressions became strange. It has always been the elders of the family who introduced Taoist partners to the younger generations. This is the first time they have seen the opposite. But for this kind of thing, they only have one sentence, that is, it is a good job. As elders, they have more or less advised Zhou Shuhai, but they were politely declined and there was no result. Now this matter is really what they want. After the arrangement, Zhou Daocheng left directly. The elders of the family will definitely arrange the wedding properly, so he doesn't need to worry about it. With his current status, he still needs to focus more on the development of Fog Valley. At the same time, there are many other important things that need him to worry about. When he left the Spirit Weapon Pavilion, the sky has also darkened, with layers of clouds and fog covering the sky. The deep night is like a thick curtain, covering the entire Wugu market. Moreover, Wugu is located in the deep mountains and barren ridges. The air in the mountains has become unusually cold, with gusts of wind everywhere, and the roar of monsters often reminds Zhou Daocheng of it, which makes him tighten his clothes. But as night falls, Wugu is not completely shrouded in darkness. Instead, on the streets of the market, there are luminous stone street lamps, illuminating the entire Wugu. And Zhou Daocheng rarely enjoys the night view of Wugu. The luminous stone here is particularly special and very different from ordinary luminous stones. Ordinary luminous stones are mostly white, but the luminous stones in Wugu are generally light yellow, which adds a warm and soft feeling to Wugu market. This luminous stone is a kind of ore found around Wugu. Because it is affected by the fluorescent yellow stone mine, it has a hint of light yellow like candlelight. There are a lot of these luminous stones, and Zhou Daocheng sent people to collect them in large quantities. Street lights were set up on both sides of the streets in Wugu market. As soon as night falls, the entire Wugu market is immediately illuminated with lights, which is not much different from the daytime, which also makes the nightlife in Wugu more colorful. For other markets, most of them will gradually become quiet at night, various shops will close, and the monks will return to the cave to rest. However, Wugu market is different. After night, it will become more lively. Because most of the casual cultivators are hunting monsters outside during the day, when they return to the market, it is already close to night, which is the time for them to release. Whether they go to the tavern to drink or go to Tianqi Shanju for a medicinal bath, they choose to do so at night. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng also specially created such a night market atmosphere, which will also greatly boost the economy and bring considerable benefits. After all, things like drinking and bathing are definitely more atmospheric at night. This is also the reason why most of the independent cultivators are reluctant to leave after settling in the Fog Valley, because the pace of life here can largely meet their needs and help them relieve stress. However, Zhou Daocheng just walked around and went straight to the second valley. It is still relatively quiet here. After all, most of the cultivators who can enter the second valley are strong, and they don't spend too much time enjoying themselves. And he came here this time with a purpose. Zhou Daocheng looked around and saw that no one was paying attention, so he went straight to a cave. This cave was not small in size, and it should be considered one of the largest caves here. And outside the cave, there was a small ancient character engraved, which was the word, Wang. If other cultivators saw it, they would recognize that this cave belonged to the Wang family. Hello, Lord of Fog Valley. Our Wang family is ready and can set off at any time. Wang Jinei, the head of the Wang family, bowed and saluted, looking a little excited. Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly and said, "Since we are ready, let's set off." While speaking, Zhou Daocheng slightly adjusted the formation and directly changed the terrain in the cave, forming a passage behind the cave, leading to the vast mountains behind. Behind him, there were 6 Zhou family acquaintances following him, all of whom were late-stage qi refining masters. Among them, there were 2 9th-level qi refining masters, namely Wang Jinei, the head of the Wang family, and Wang Jincheng, the great elder of the Wang family. The other 4 were 80% qi refining masters. Obviously, after the Wang family came to the Fog Valley, their strength was significantly enhanced. At the beginning, only the head of the family reached the 9th level of chi refining, and the strength of the other family members was very weak, but now it is no longer the same. The group came to the back of the Fog Valley Mountains, and another foundation building master, Xie Zhouhei, had been waiting here for a long time. After the two sides nodded to each other, one of them took out a black robe, put it on, and left the Fog Valley from the small path, wanting to leave in a certain direction to the west. If other cultivators saw this scene, they would be surprised to find that their destination was the Fire Dragon Gate Station. The foundation building masters of the Fog Valley, together with the Wang family cultivators, secretly went to the Fire Dragon Gate late at night. If such news were spread, it would inevitably shock many people. However, Zhou Daocheng made up his mind to put this action into practice after thinking for a long time. He also considered many factors and made a choice. On the one hand, the Wang family and the Fire Dragon Gate had a grudge, and it was a life and death grudge. As long as the Fire Dragon Gate was solved, the hearts of the Wang family would be won. Of course, for Zhou Daocheng, this was just the most insignificant consideration. In addition, he also learned from the Wang family that the reason they had a grudge with the Fire Dragon Gate was because they had a conflict when they explored a fairy ruins together. Many Wang family members died in the process. It was a cave of a Purple Mansion cultivator, and it was also a Purple Mansion cultivator who was proficient in talismans. There were a lot of precious talismans and inheritances inside. The two sides agreed to explore together, but in the middle of the journey, the Fire Dragon Gate broke its promise in order to seize all the treasures and chose to slaughter all the Wang family members and monopolize the entire ruins. In this process alone, a total of 12 Wang family members died, 6 of whom were elders of the 9th level of chi refining. This almost caused the entire Wang family to suffer heavy losses. Almost all the 9th level chi refining masters were killed or injured. Only Wang Jianei managed to escape by faking his death. But if it only stopped there, the Wang family would only think that they were inferior to others, too naive, and listen to others. But what happened next was the real reason for the fight to the death. In order to completely cover up the ruins, the Fire Dragon Gate actually sent strong men to the Wang family again after leaving the ruins and massacred the Wang family. The main reason was to plunder the basic talisman inheritance of the Wang family. Because they obtained a relatively advanced talisman inheritance in the ruins, but because there was no basic inheritance, it was difficult to learn directly, so they set their sights on the Wang family. 2 consecutive strikes, one killed a large number of 9th level chi refining masters, and the second massacred a large number of weaker Wang family members, almost destroying the Wang family directly. Finally, Wang Jianei, who escaped from the ruins at the risk of his life, fled with the remaining clansmen, hid in the vast mountains, and finally came to the Fog Valley. After listening to the history of the Wang family, Zhou Daocheng was also sighing. This is similar to the Zhou family in the past. They were not wrong, but since they were born in the world of immortal cultivation, they would inevitably be involved in disputes over interests and face all kinds of open and secret arrows. This is the cruelty of the world of immortal cultivation. The hatred of the Wang family for the Fire Dragon is no less than the hatred of the Zhou family for the Ma family and the Chen family. But such hatred can only be buried deep in the heart most of the time, and then lick the wound silently, continue to accumulate, improve strength, and wait for the day of counterattack. The Zhou family of Tianqi Mountain has not found a suitable opportunity for revenge, but the Wang family has found it. In the previous communication, Zhou Daocheng had learned about the situation in Baihifeng City from a few words. Jin sect saw that the situation was not right and had chosen to withdraw from Baihifeng City. Xian Pavilion and Baihua Pavilion each lost a foundation building strongman in the previous war. The strongest Disha sect has also become disunited and chose to cooperate with Wugu to seek a new way out. Now is the time when Baihifeng City is at its weakest, and it is also the best time to attack Hualongmen. Because in this situation, even if they know that Hualongmen has been attacked, other forces in Baihifeng City have no ability to support it. The only Disha sect that can support it will not offend Wugu for Hualongmen. This is the best time. Even in Zhou Daocheng's plan, there is more than just Hualongmen that can be solved. However, this is only the first plan at present. We can take this opportunity to further weaken the strength of Baihifeng City and make them truly collapse. At the same time, we can also obtain the talisman inheritance obtained by Hualongmen from the ruins. Why not? A group of 8 people went to Hualongmen overnight, and hurried at the fastest speed. It took them 13 days to finally come to a sect hidden in the mountains. It was a mountain that looked like a fire dragon. There was a second-level spiritual vein in it, and many buildings were built in it. Lord of the Fog Valley, this is it. This is the station of Hualongmen. Wang Janae looked at the mountain gate in front of him, his eyes full of hatred, and he almost gritted his teeth and said that he wanted to eat it alive. Zhou Daocheng nodded, and roughly looked at the surrounding environment, and found that the foundation of Hualongmen should not be high. There was no protection of the sect protection formation. There were only a few disciples of Hualongmen who were on guard on the surrounding mountain roads. They were even drowsy at this time, which made the invasion almost impossible. But it makes sense. The Fire Dragon sect was founded by independent cultivators and has only been established for less than a few decades. It is normal that they do not have a deep foundation. Moreover, they have never encountered an invasion, so they are not very careful in terms of vigilance. Moreover, with their strength, ordinary small forces dare not easily come to them. In this way, it would naturally be convenient for Zhou Daocheng and others. Zhou Daocheng directly arranged the plan, bypassing the front mountain gate, digging a tunnel from the back mountain, and trying to enter the interior of the Fire Dragon Gate. That location was the shady side of the mountain where the spiritual vein was located. There were jagged rocks and messy trees everywhere, and no cultivators were active there. Using the quicksand formation and golden spear 100 vine formation, a tunnel was forcibly opened, extending all the way to the interior of the Fire Dragon Gate. Then, with the help of the powerful perception of the foundation building strongman, he began to look for the location of the Fire Dragon Gate leader in the entire sect. Although only the Purple Mansion cultivators have divine consciousness and can conduct large-scale detection, the spiritual power of the foundation building strongman has also improved, and can roughly feel the location of the strongman. 2 days later, Zhou Daocheng was at the top of the spiritual vein mountain and sensed a hint of a strong man's aura, hiding in a stone chamber. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but sigh. God really helps me. The tunnel that was opened happened to be right under the feet of the leader of the Fire Dragon Gate. If they attacked at night, they only needed to continue digging upwards. After deciding on the plan, the group no longer hesitated and started to act directly that night. As a large amount of rocks were turned into quicksand, the mountain was almost hollowed out, spreading all the way to the top of the mountain, and the breath of the leader of the Fire Dragon Gate became clearer and clearer. At this time, Zhou Daocheng and others became more careful, trying to reduce the noise as much as possible to ensure their own concealment. And Zhou Daocheng also used the first-level superior, fog hiding array, to cover his whereabouts to prevent being discovered by the leader of the Fire Dragon Gate. However, I don't know if they were too well hidden or the Fire Dragon Gate was too lax, and they didn't notice their existence at all until the moment of the sneak attack. The night was as dark as ink, and no sound could be heard. Zhou Daocheng and Xie Zhouhei were under the stone chamber in the Fire Dragon Gate, and their magic power had been condensed to the extreme. The two looked at each other. Zhou Daocheng nodded heavily, and then he made a move and slapped the hard floor above. Boom! The terrifying force collided, and a violent sound broke out. Suddenly, smoke and dust rose up, and a hole was directly punched in the floor. The master of the Fire Dragon Gate, who was sitting cross-legged and practicing, was interrupted. His breath was disordered for a while, and he spurted out a mouthful of reverse blood. He hurriedly hid behind. Who? Someone responded to him, and saw 2 black shadows coming out from the ground. Such a good opportunity. Zhou Daocheng naturally couldn't let it go. As soon as he entered the stone room, he immediately used the Golden Spear 100 Vine formation to prevent the master of the Fire Dragon Gate from escaping. And Xie Zhouhei had also quickly made a move, continuously hitting the ice spikes. The master of the Fire Dragon Gate, who was already in a disordered breath, was immediately forced into a corner, and was hit by the cold ice spikes. The wounds were immediately covered by the cold air. Faced with such a situation, he could only rush to regulate the disordered mana while trying to fight back. At the same time, he kept asking loudly, "Who are you? Why are you attacking my Fire Dragon Gate?" He tried to delay the enemy with words. Unfortunately, Zhou Daocheng and Xie Zhouhei didn't care and attacked without hesitation. Every time they were killing moves, they completely adhered to the concept of taking advantage of his weakness to kill him. In fact, Xie Zhouhei's strength should be slightly weaker than that of the leader of the Fire Dragon Gate. However, now it is 2 against 1 after all, and it was a sneak attack during training, which directly reduced the strength of the leader of the Fire Dragon Gate by more than 40%. He was beaten back step by step and had no room for resistance. This is just the situation where Xie Zhouhei attacked alone. After Zhou Daocheng arranged the formation and made sure that there was no escape around, he immediately joined the battle. And he directly used his trump card, Spirit Puppet Formation. Since they came with the purpose of killing, there was no need to show mercy or hide anything, because as long as the enemy was dead, no news could be spread. The two spirit puppets attacked quickly, and their huge snake bodies filled the entire stone chamber. They rushed towards the leader of the fire dragon gate with their bloody mouths. They couldn't react for a while, and immediately had a mouthful of flesh torn off. The leader of the fire dragon gate grimaced in pain, and couldn't help but screaming. Beads of sweat covered his entire face, and his eyes were red. He had reached the point of risking his life. Whether it was the two spirit puppets or Xie Zhouhei, their individual strength was not as good as his, but with the three of them besieging him, he had no room to resist. Especially the two spirit puppets, in a certain sense, they were even more difficult to deal with than Xie Zhouhei. On the one hand, they had extremely strong bodies, made up of layers of black puppet wood, and the inside was completely solid. Even if one layer was broken, it didn't matter, and it didn't affect the spirit puppet's battle at all. Moreover, even if the flesh was hurt, the spirit puppet didn't feel pain and continued to attack. In addition to their strong physiques, the fighting instincts of these two spirit puppets are extremely sharp, and the spirits of the monsters have very good fighting skills. And sometimes, Zhou Daocheng would directly control the spirit puppets to fight, thus erupting into a stronger battle, making the leader of the fire dragon gate miserable. It must be said that as the leader of a faction, he still has some ability. Even in such a harsh environment, he still took out a large number of second-level talismans and continued to bombard them, trying to break the battle and escape from this stone chamber. The effect is also very obvious. The Golden Spear 100 Vine formation can't withstand the attack of the second-level talisman, especially the Fire Flame Dragon Talisman, which is of the second-level middle quality, and directly blasted a huge hole in the vine barrier. However, the gap in strength is still too big. If it were 3 cultivators at the first level of foundation building, they would probably retreat and let the leader of the fire dragon gate go in order to ensure their own safety under the attack of a large number of second-level talismans. However, this situation does not exist with the spirit puppet. Faced with this situation, Zhou Daocheng directly controlled the spirit puppet and used the snake to block Xie Zhouhei in front of him, directly blocking all the talismans. Zhou Daocheng still knew which was more important, a strong man of foundation building or 2 spirit puppets. After all, spirit puppets do not have growth potential, and the manufacturing cost is relatively low. They are just a means of fighting. They are not as good as a cultivator of foundation building at all. It is the most suitable to block damage. With such tacit cooperation, Xie Zhouhei was unharmed and bombarded the leader of the fire dragon gate, making his injuries more serious. Faced with such a situation, the leader of the fire dragon gate also showed a touch of despair in his eyes. And after a series of battles and the stimulation of pain in his body, his mind became much clearer. He stared at the formation in front of him silently and said in a gloomy voice, "In this area nearby, the only one who can possess such exquisite formation skills should be the Lord of Fog Valley, right? I just want to ask, how did I offend you? Why did you attack me?" Zhou Daocheng glanced at him coldly and said calmly, "Don't think about delaying time. Your little tricks are useless to me." Although he was just standing aside to control the formation, it didn't mean that he was lazy. On the contrary, he was more careful than anyone else in observing the battle situation and could easily observe everything. When the leader of the fire dragon gate was speaking just now, he was obviously approaching his direction, waiting for an opportunity to attack, so he naturally noticed it at the first time. Not giving him any chance, Zhou Daocheng stepped out of the quicksand formation and cooperated with the quicksand technique to directly control the leader of the fire dragon gate from the ground. Afterwards, the 2 spirit puppets cooperated with Xie Zhouhei to directly use the killing move to attack the vital points of the leader of the fire dragon gate. This time, the leader of the fire dragon gate had no way to avoid it, and it was still a dead end. Seeing death approaching, the leader of the fire dragon gate had red eyes, full of resentment and unwillingness, and gnashed his teeth and said, "Even if I die, I will never let you beasts have an easy time." While speaking, the leader of the fire dragon gate had a ferocious look in his eyes, and he directly pulled out the talisman from his sleeves and flew towards Zhou Daocheng. "Be careful," Xie Zhouhei hurriedly reminded loudly and quickly blocked it, but he was still a step slow. The talisman was extremely fast and flew towards Zhou Daocheng quickly. This is also a second-level middle-grade fire dragon talisman, and its power should not be underestimated. The terrifying flames exploded, the blazing flames burned fiercely, and the flames were almost rose red. Even the surrounding rocks were burned and melted directly, and the power was directly swept in all directions, directly blowing up the entire stone room. The previous, Fire Dragon Talisman, was used to escape the formation, so it was used against the Golden Spear 100 Vine formation, causing less noise. But this time, it exploded directly inside the stone chamber, and the force hit Zhou Daocheng solidly. Looking at the exploding flames, the leader of the Fire Dragon Gate, even though he was facing death, still laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, since you want me dead, you must be prepared to pay the price, Lord of the Fog Valley. You didn't expect that you would have this day. Ha ha ha. Although the breath was getting weaker and weaker, and the voice was getting smaller and smaller, the laughter was extremely happy. On the contrary, Xie Zhouhei, who was standing aside, had an extremely ugly face. He didn't expect that the other party would fight to the death to deal with the Lord of the Fog Valley before he died, and he succeeded. This was definitely his dereliction of duty. But the next moment, a figure slowly walked out of the flames. Zhou Daocheng looked calm. His purple robe was not damaged at all, and the bronze mask exuded brilliant colors under the reflection of the black and red flames. A water blue light shield was slowly melting in the flames, offsetting most of the energy. Perhaps Zhou Daocheng is indeed slightly inferior in attack, especially when fighting against cultivators of the same level. Without using formations and magic weapons, it is even difficult to hurt the opponent. But in terms of defensive ability, he is definitely the best in the same level. Inner armor, outer armor, Wu Earth Spirit, strong physical fitness, plus the second-level magic weapon, Blue Moon Bracelet, layer after layer of protection, almost all the damage was taken down. When seeing this intact figure, the eyes of the Fire Dragon Gate gradually became turbid, and the expression suddenly became ferocious, and he struggled very unwillingly. How is it possible? But the next moment, Xie Zhouhei stepped down directly and crushed his head. Senior, are you okay? Xie Zhouhei asked hurriedly. Quote. Zhou Daocheng waved his hand and said indifferently, don't worry, it's just a dying counterattack of a wild dog, it won't hurt anyone. Quote. While speaking, he began to look around the caves around him, and put some important things directly into the storage bag, including the magic weapon and storage bag of the leader of the Fire Dragon sect. It is worth mentioning that the leader of the Fire Dragon sect originally had 2 magic weapons, one for attack and one for defense. However, the attack magic weapon should have been destroyed in the War of the Qingshan sect. Now there is only one shield magic weapon left on his body. After resisting 2 attacks just now, it was directly knocked away by the giant spirit puppet snake. This just happened to be a bargain for Zhou Daocheng, and all of them were stuffed into the storage bag. Afterwards, Zhou Daocheng directly arranged, thank you, fellow Taoist, go help Wang Jinei and kill all the late-stage qi refining masters. Remember not to reveal your identity and don't cause too much killing. Quote. Okay, I'll go and watch it. Quote. Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly. Although he attacked the Fire Dragon Gate at night, he did not want to make a big fuss. Killing a foundation building expert and some late-stage qi refining experts was enough. Unlike the family power that was linked by blood, as a sect power, after losing the master and elders, it would most likely fall apart directly, and there would be no harm in the future. So there was no need to cause too many casualties. And killing the master of the Fire Dragon Gate and slaughtering the entire Fire Dragon Gate were 2 completely different concepts. The latter's behavior was not much different from that of an evil cultivator. Once exposed, it would be a stain that would ruin one's reputation. Therefore, letting Xie Zhouhei go to help was to prevent the Fire Dragon sect's cultivators from counterattacking, and to prevent the Wang family's cultivators from killing too many people in anger. Zhou Daocheng himself began to check the items on the Fire Dragon sect. In addition to the second-level magic weapon, there were many things in the storage bag. There were many pills, most of which were used for daily practice, restoring spiritual energy, and some healing pills, and the lowest quality was the first-level upper grade, and there was even a second-level lower grade, Yuanling pill. If taken by cultivators in the early stage of foundation building, there is a high probability of upgrading a realm. 4 pieces were found in the ruins of Xuanian sect before, which are very valuable. In addition, there are a large number of spirit stones, almost more than 2,000 pieces. However, after Zhou Daocheng searched for it, he did not find the talisman inheritance, and he could not help but frown. Other gains are not the focus, most of which can be purchased with spirit stones in the market, only the talisman inheritance is a truly valuable and priceless treasure. It is also something that can truly improve the foundation and enhance the strength of Wugu and Zhou family. After realizing this, Zhou Daocheng immediately went to the Fire Dragon Gate station and blocked 3 places. The first place is the Fire Dragon Gate's sect treasury. The second place is the sect's Sutra pavilion. The third place is the area where the Fire Dragon Gate uses to refine talismans. Needless to say, the treasury needs to be protected to prevent precious items from being robbed, but there is a high probability that there is no talisman inheritance in it. Zhou Daocheng searched the Sutra library and found that the books inside were not many, or even very few, and most of them were common books in the world of immortal cultivation, and were not very valuable. However, when he found the area for refining talismans, he knew he had found the right place. It was a cave hidden in the cave, with rich spiritual energy inside, and there were several talisman masters. Zhou Daocheng was naturally rude and arrested them all. Ordinary members of the Fire Dragon sect can let him go, but the talisman master is a very important resource with extraordinary value, so he must be brought back. Later, after a simple search, Zhou Daocheng successfully found the talisman inheritance here. The quality is as high as 3rd level low grade, and he has a large number of manufacturing methods for talismans. Moreover, there was actually a method of refining talismans, which made Zhou Daocheng even more excited. If there is no accident, this should be the talisman inheritance obtained in the ruins. Just this kind of harvest will make the trip worthwhile. The inheritance of talismans, coupled with several mature talisman masters, can fully cultivate talisman masters in a systematic way. From then on, the Zhou family was not only a family that was proficient in weapon refining, but also a family that was proficient in the 3 immortal cultivation skills of weapon refining, talismans, and formations. Its profound foundation far surpassed other foundation building forces. And there is another very important point, that is, the Zhou family owns Wugufang City and has channels to obtain a large amount of materials for refining weapons, making talismans, and setting up formations. This is a huge advantage. For many family forces, it is indeed difficult to inherit a kind of immortal cultivation technique, but there is an even more difficult point, which is to obtain a large amount of corresponding materials. Without sufficient and stable materials, it is also impossible to cultivate the skills of cultivating immortals. But for the Zhou family, these problems can be solved to a certain extent. Although the price of purchasing materials is still expensive, the problems that can be solved with spiritual stones are not particularly troublesome. However, Zhou Daocheng was not happy for long, and what happened next made him dumbfounded. When he asked several talisman masters about their levels, he got a shocking result. The talisman masters here are all 1st level low-grade talisman masters. There was even a gray-haired old man among them. Zhou Daobao originally thought that he was an advanced talisman master, but he didn't expect that he could only refine 1st level low-grade talismans. This made him very angry. A group of half-assed 1st level talisman masters. Just when Zhou Daocheng was suspicious, Xie Zhouhei and Wang Jinei also finished handling the matters at hand and rushed over. When Wang Jinei learned about the situation Zhou Daocheng was facing, he was also dumbfounded and explained the reasons. It turns out that before this, the Fire Dragon sect had no talisman inheritance at all, and even strictly speaking, they knew nothing about making talismans. This is why, after they obtained the talisman inheritance in the ruins, they still massacred the Wang family, just to rob the basic talisman manufacturing technology and rob the talisman materials. The group of talisman masters in front of them should be the talisman masters temporarily trained by Fire Dragon sect in recent times. Without the guidance of a master, it is normal for their skills to be low. In this regard, Zhou Daocheng could only shake his head helplessly and accepted this cruel fact. That's all. Your Wang family should make a copy of this talisman inheritance. In addition, I hope the ancestors of the Wang family will not forget our previous agreement. As Zhou Daocheng spoke, he handed the talisman inheritance in his hand to Wang Jinei. However, the only method of refining talismans was retained by himself. If necessary, it is still necessary to leave some backup. Handing over the inheritance of the 3rd level low grade to the Wang family is already the most benevolent thing. Wang Jinei hurriedly took over the inheritance, his eyes full of excitement, and he repeatedly agreed, "Senior Lord of Fog Valley, please rest assured, I still remember the previous agreement. Even if you send a child with talent for making talismans, our Wang family will train it for you. And if you have any needs in the future, just ask me, the Wang family, and we will do our best as long as it is within our capabilities." Wang Jinei bowed respectfully, showing great respect and gratitude. Zhou Daocheng nodded. The head of the Wang family was not very scheming, but he was a temperamental person. Being able to subdue him this time was definitely a good thing. There is no need to be polite. Since you have joined Wugu, we are working hard for the same goal. Helping your Wang family is also helping Wugu. Zhou Daocheng's words were condescending and he did not use this to ask the Wang family to do more, which made Wang Janae even more grateful. Senior, don't worry, the Wang family will do their best to assist Wugu's development in the future and follow behind Senior. Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly and accepted these words without being too polite. Then, he changed the subject and asked, how was the situation at the Fire Dragon sect resolved? Wang Janae said seriously, we followed the instructions of our seniors. We killed all the elders and deacons. We did not kill innocent people indiscriminately. Zhou Daocheng glanced at Wang Janae in surprise. He didn't expect that the Wang family could suppress such deep hatred. It seemed that they were doing something reliable. However, Wang Janae paused and added, but in addition to the elders and deacons, there are also some disciples with lower strength but good talents. I will also deal with them all. Zhou Daocheng nodded. This is not a big problem. Some of the elders and deacons' direct disciples are considered core members of the sect. Keeping these people is troublesome, and it would be more appropriate to kill them. After finishing everything, Zhou Daocheng began to count the harvest as quickly as possible. In fact, there are only two parts, that is the treasure house and the spiritual vein itself. The spiritual vein cannot be taken away, and it is not suitable for occupation, but Zhou Daocheng does not intend to destroy it. After all, it will harm others and there is no need to do so. As for the things in the treasure house, they were all taken away. Speaking of which, the Fire Dragon Gate's foundation is not deep, and there are not many valuable treasures in the treasure house. In addition to tens of thousands of spirit stones, the rest are a large number of talisman materials and some daily elixirs. The advantage is that the quantity is huge, but the actual value is not high. However, this batch of talisman paper and talisman materials of various qualities is a pleasant surprise. It is obvious that the Fire Dragon Gate intends to cultivate a large number of talisman makers based on talisman making, so it hoards so many basic talisman making materials, which is now cheap for Zhou Daocheng. Bringing them all back should be able to cultivate several talisman masters. After cleaning up, the few people stopped hesitating, and after trying to erase the traces, they quickly rushed back to the Fog Valley again. Killing people for treasures and destroying people's sects is really not suitable for publicity. It is because the current situation is special, and the significance of the third-level talisman inheritance is huge. Zhou Daocheng agreed to this action, otherwise he would not be so reckless. But it must be said that the harvest this time is indeed huge. Half a month later, Zhou Daocheng returned to Wugu. Xie Zhouhei continued to practice in his cave, as if he had never been out. The Wang family also resumed their daily lives, and no one knew they had been out. As for the resources they harvested, they were also distributed secretly and slowly digested into strength. However, there is no wall that is impenetrable. Although the destruction of the Fire Dragon sect was kept secret, it was soon spread. Of course, no one linked this matter to the Wugu market. There were only rumors that the Fire Dragon sect had provoked a force that should not be provoked, and was eventually destroyed overnight. The sect, elders, and deacons were all killed, and the sect disciples fled in all directions, without even seeing the identity of the attackers. The demise of an old foundation building force immediately involved the nerves of many people, and also made other forces around uneasy. The more powerful foundation building forces did not dare to be careless at all, and increased the vigilance of the sect, fearing that they would encounter the same situation as the Fire Dragon sect. Some weaker chi refining forces were even more panicked in such a situation. In the big environment, there was the war of the Qingshan sect, and now in the small environment, there was the tragedy of the destruction of the Fire Dragon sect. They were like frightened birds, and all shrank in their garrisons. There are also many small forces. After vaguely sensing the threat, they began to look for a larger backer in an attempt to survive this turbulent period. Only Lin Xiaoyuan could not help but frown after hearing the news. Although the 5 major forces in Baihifang City are now close to disintegration, this matter has not been publicized, and the Fire Dragon Gate is still a member of Baihifang City in name. Which force is so bold that it dares to directly destroy the Fire Dragon Gate? This made him wonder, does the person who took action know the inside story of Baihifang City? If this is true, a figure with a purple robe and bronze mask appeared in his mind, and his eyes could not help but condense slightly, secretly sighing. Lord of the Fog Valley, your action, is it a little too fast? However, since Zhou Daocheng did it, he was naturally not afraid of Lin Xiaoyuan knowing. Moreover, a fire dragon gate is not worth Lin Xiaoyuan's face. At this moment, Zhou Daocheng is in his own cave, counting the gains of this time. All the materials for making talismans were handed over to the Wang family. After all, whether it was training talisman masters or making talismans on a daily basis, the Wang family was responsible, so it was most appropriate to let them arrange the materials. As for other things, they were all distributed. The Wang family and Xie Zhouhei took a small share, and Zhou Daocheng took the majority. However, it is worth mentioning that the second-level magic weapon, Red Dragon Shield, of the leader of the Fire Dragon Gate was handed over to Xie Zhouhei for use. Since breaking through the foundation building, Xie Zhouhei has not even had a decent weapon. Now it is rare to get a magic weapon, which is just right for him to use, which should be able to enhance a lot of strength. However, Xie Zhouhei mainly practices water-attributed skills, which are incompatible with the attributes of the Red Dragon Shield. It is not easy to use. For the time being, he can only make do with it. It will not be too late to change it after he has other magic weapons in the future. In addition to these gains, Zhou Daocheng's personal gains are not small. Looking at the items in front of him, he is in a very good mood. In terms of spiritual stones, a total of about 35,000 spiritual stones were harvested. Xie Zhouhei and the Wang family each received 5,000 low-grade spiritual stones, and the remaining 25,000 low-grade spiritual stones were all obtained by Zhou Daocheng. In terms of monster materials, after removing most of the talisman-making materials, there are not many other materials, and the quality is not high. At most, they are only first-grade upper grade, and the value is not as high as imagined. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng did not check them specifically, but directly handed them over to Wei Hanshan, asking him to put them all into the warehouse according to different types. Next to the underground ice cave, Zhou Daocheng also built another underground treasure house to store various resources of the Fog Valley. Whether it is finished products such as magic tools, formations, talismans, elixirs, or various materials, or even spiritual stones, they are all clearly separated and stored in different small rooms. This is the foundation of the entire Fog Valley. Now there are a lot of things piled up. Zhou Daocheng usually takes materials from this underground treasure house when he arranges formations. In addition, the most important gain is the talisman inheritance, which is of the third grade lower quality. Zhou Daocheng roughly checked and found that there are about 160 kinds of first-grade talismans, 47 kinds of second-grade talismans, and 5 kinds of third-grade lower-quality talismans. In terms of coverage, this set of talisman inheritance is actually not as good as the formation inheritance owned by Zhou Daocheng. After all, the number of talismans is relatively small and not particularly complete. Zhou Daocheng guessed that this set of inheritance should be compiled by the Purple Mansion cultivator himself, and these talismans should also be collected alone, so the number is not large. Moreover, the talismans contained in it are relatively common, most of which can be purchased on the market, and only a small part is relatively precious and rare. For example, 5 third-grade talismans are of extraordinary value, but they should not be used in a short time. Of course, the most precious thing should be the production method of that kind of talisman treasure. This kind of talisman is called Blue Lotus Mysterious Fire Talisman, and its quality is second-level medium grade. The refining method is relatively difficult. Not only does it have special requirements for the talisman paper material, but it also requires the use of special flames. However, once it is successfully refined, the spell, Blue Lotus Mysterious Fire, can be released many times, and its power is very good. If the Zhou family has such a talisman, even if there is no foundation building strongman to protect it, it can be used to deter the villains and no one dares to invade. Unfortunately, in a short period of time, neither the Zhou family nor the Wugu should be able to make talismans. Even let alone making talismans, even refining a second-level low-grade talisman requires many years of accumulation. After all, this is a new immortal cultivation skill, which requires slowly accumulating experience and cultivating talents. Zhou Daocheng had no choice but to reluctantly put away the inheritance and temporarily focus on the training of talisman masters. A total of 4 talisman masters were captured from the Fire Dragon Gate, but they were all novices who could only refine first-level low-grade talismans. Zhou Daocheng really looked down on them and threw them all to the Wang family to help. If it was a talisman master with a higher level, it would be fine to train him, but there is really no point in training a talisman master like this whose identity is unknown and whose skills are not superb. Instead of training them, it is better to train the Zhou family members. Zhou Daocheng contacted Balin Lake specifically and asked his great-grandfather Zhou Chengyi to ask for 2 members of the Dao generation to learn talismans from the Wang family. Originally, he actually planned to find a few more members, but it was really hard to find them. There are only 10 members of the Dao generation left in the entire Zhou family. In addition to Zhou Daocheng, Zhou Daobai, Zhou Daoqi, Zhou Daoshou, Zhou Daoyuan, and Zhou Daoyu, there are also 4 younger brothers. 2 of them have already started learning the art of refining weapons, and they have good talent, so it is impossible for them to switch to learning talismans. The remaining 2, Zhou Daoyan and Zhou Daolin, are only 5 or 6 years old, and have not yet officially started practicing martial arts, but they were directly sent to the Wang family. When they saw these 2 little brats, the Wang family was dumbfounded. How could this be teaching talisman techniques? If they were a few years younger, they would have to start training from infancy. Moreover, when they learned that the 2 children were from the Zhou family, they were even more surprised and had some guesses about the relationship between the Zhou family and the Lord of the Fog Valley. However, Zhou Daocheng did not explain. Whether he admitted or denied it, it was meaningless. Only strength is the most important. If he has strong enough strength, then it doesn't matter whether his identity is exposed or not. No matter whether it is the Ma family, the Chen family, or the Qi family, they can all be solved. After handing the 2 children over to the Wang family, Zhou Daocheng no longer cared about it. He believed that the Wang family would definitely teach the 2 children well. So for a period of time, Zhou Daocheng began to resume his peaceful practice life. He meditated and practiced every day, but the practice speed was very slow. The first grade, thick earth spirit formation, could hardly supply the earth spirit energy he needed for practice. According to his estimation, if one cultivates in this environment, it will take about 8 to 10 years to break through to the second level of foundation building. This cultivation speed is neither fast nor slow. For a cultivator with 3 spiritual roots, it is a relatively normal cultivation speed. Cultivation is like this. Sit in meditation and practice in countless boring days, day after day, year after year, constantly absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and slowly improve one's own strength. However, in such a boring and ordinary life, there is also the joy of a comfortable life. Zhao Yunji has come out of retreat, and her strength has reached the late 9th level of qi refining. After possessing a complete 2nd level technique, she also perfectly demonstrated her talent, and the speed of cultivation was immediately improved. Moreover, for Zhao Yunji, it will be easier to break through the foundation. Even without the foundation building pill, the success rate of the breakthrough should be able to reach 20%. This is the advantage brought by talent. However, the more talented you are, the more necessary it is to use the foundation building pill. Don't be afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of 1. If you accidentally fail to break through, it will almost ruin a cultivator with 2 spiritual roots. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng planned to wait for the red snake tattooed woman to come back, and then use the foundation building pill to help Zhao Yunji break through the foundation building stage. During this period, the 2 of them resumed their life as Taoist companions, talking to each other, being affectionate and charming, being each other's teacher and student, and discussing the great way of cultivation day and night. Zhou Daocheng was also diligent and constantly accumulated innate purple energy, and at the same time, the relationship between the 2 became closer and closer. In such an ordinary life, being Taoist companions for each other is a companionship and comfort in life and spirit, and has cultivated a deep relationship. For Zhou Daocheng, Zhao Yunji is one of the closest people, who knows most of his secrets and also helps and accompanies him in secret. For Zhao Yunji, she has completely left the Zhao family, and the only relative in the current world of cultivation is this Taoist companion. In such a peaceful life, Zhou Daocheng's state of mind has settled down, becoming more stable and mature. Whether it is the path of cultivation or the control of formation skills, he has become more stable and sophisticated, and has lost his former immaturity. Recently, Zhou Daocheng has also reduced the time for cultivation and transferred part of his energy to the formation, trying to improve the formation skills to the level of the 2nd level lower grade. However, this is more difficult. He tried many times, but he didn't get the hang of it. After all, he was still a little short of the level. And Zhao Yunji, at Zhou Daocheng's request, began to learn a cultivation skill. With the current conditions, Zhou Daocheng has a lot of cultivation skills, such as refining, formation, and talismans, and the quality is above the 2nd level. At the same time, with his identity as the Lord of the Fog Valley, he can also supply sufficient materials for practice, and is fully capable of cultivating Zhao Yunji. After thinking again and again, Zhao Yunji finally chose talismans. This is the result of many considerations. Zhao Yunji is mainly water spirit root, not suitable for refining and alchemy, and Zhou Daocheng does not have a mature alchemy inheritance, so these two are excluded first. As for formations and talismans, in fact, both are good choices. Relatively speaking, formations should be better. After all, Zhou Daocheng is a formation master. If he teaches her hand in hand, the improvement speed will be very fast. Besides, Zhao Yunji's talent is not weak, so she should be very likely to become a formation master. However, after thinking it over again and again, Zhao Yunji still did not choose the formation. Of course, the reason is very sufficient. In her words, if Zhou Daocheng teaches in person, although the effect is very good, it is easy to scold people. It is likely to lead to a breakdown in the relationship between the two parties. In this regard, Zhou Daocheng touched his nose and expressed his helplessness. Recalling the scenes of his usual teaching of Lin Chongshu and Zhou Daoyuan, he had nothing to refute for a while. All along, he has been both a brother and a master, so he will be relatively strict, especially in the process of teaching. Punishment is also a common thing. So in the end, Zhao Yunji chose the talisman, and Zhou Daocheng had to support her. Similarly, Zhao Yunji was sent to the Wang family to study. When the head of the Wang family learned about Zhao Yunji's identity, his eyes were wide open, and he hurriedly bowed and saluted, respectfully inviting him into the Wang family. At the same time, he was in a dilemma about Zhao Yunji's request to learn talismans. He couldn't agree or refuse. If he refused such a small matter, it would be inappropriate and would easily affect the relationship between the two parties. But if he agreed, how should he teach her in the future? After all, this person is the Taoist partner of the Lord of Fog Valley, and her status is not ordinary. They can scold others for their poor performance, but they dare not do this. Could they kneel on the ground, carefully point out the mistakes, and then beg her to make the talisman well? However, Zhou Daocheng directly said, there is no need to treat her differently, just teach her the same way as others. Zhao Yunji also made it clear that she would learn as an apprentice, and everything would be the same as other apprentices, without any special treatment. But this is just for listening, and Wang Janae naturally couldn't really believe it. After thinking for a long time, considering that such a thing is not suitable to be rejected, he finally agreed, and even invited the best talisman maker of the Wang family to teach Zhao Yunji. However, he did not become a disciple, and the Wang family did not dare to accept this apprentice. After all, Zhou Daocheng's status is here, and the title of master is not so easy to call. In the days that followed, Zhao Yunji also officially began to learn the talisman making technology. And at the beginning of learning, she showed amazing talent and understanding, and was able to quickly grasp the content of the teaching. It took only half a month to become a first-level low-grade talisman maker. This has a lot to do with her strong strength. The rich spiritual energy can help her better control the talisman pen and steadily draw the talisman. Moreover, the talisman is the embodiment of magic. The cultivators with higher realms naturally have a deeper understanding of magic, and the difficulty will be slightly reduced. But putting aside these factors, Zhao Yunji's talent is indeed not bad, at least she is not stupid, and she will soon reach the entry level. In this way, the Zhou family has finally gotten started in the art of talismans, and can barely be called a talisman maker. This is definitely a historic breakthrough. At the same time, there are also major breakthroughs in formations. In recent days, Zhou Daocheng has more free time, so he can teach Zhou Daoyuan and Lin Chongshu. He often spends most of the day in the spiritual medicine garden, and teaches them how to arrange formations. Compared with talismans, formations are relatively more complicated and require more details, so the learning time is relatively slow. Zhou Daoyuan and Lin Chongshu have been studying for several years and finally learned all the basic knowledge and barely became a first-level formation master. However, the formations they can arrange are still only a few, such as the simplest spirit gathering formation and earth defense formation. This is not because they are incapable of learning more formations, but Zhou Daocheng deliberately did so that they could lay a solid foundation and steadily improve, and temporarily put all their thoughts on these more important formations. Only by truly laying a solid foundation can the road ahead be easy. The two most important formations are the gathering spirit formation and the earth control formation. The gathering spirit formation is the most common formation and the most used formation in the world of immortal cultivation. It contains a lot of basic knowledge of formations and is most suitable for laying a solid foundation. Moreover, Zhou Daocheng will most likely teach them how to fuse formations in the future. The first thing involved is the fusion of the gathering spirit formation and other various formations, so it is very necessary to master the gathering spirit formation. As for the earth control formation, it involves a cave-type formation, which is the foundation of the earth spirit house and can bring a lot of wealth, so it is natural for the two to learn it. Moreover, if they learn the changes in the formation patterns in the earth control formation, they will be more comfortable adjusting other formations in the future. Under Zhou Daocheng's strict supervision, the two have been able to successfully set up two types of earth spirit houses of the first level lower grade. That is, a single room and a 5-person room. Just this small change means a big step forward, because they have been able to barely change the array pattern and have a deeper understanding of the array knowledge. Such ability is something that many senior array masters cannot do. And in the future, the two of them will be able to work in the shop, refine the first level array and sell it, which can not only share Zhou Daocheng's pressure but also improve their own skills. Therefore, in addition to living and practicing in the spiritual medicine garden and learning array knowledge, they now go to the Wugu market regularly to work in the shop. In the past, Zhou Daocheng always sold arrays at the auction venue, but now for the sake of these two children, Zhou Daocheng specially took out a shop as a shop dedicated to selling arrays. In the shop, a shopkeeper was found to be responsible for the daily operation of the shop and the sale of arrays. Zhou Daoyuan and Lin Chongshu are mainly responsible for refining arrays and providing them for sale. Zhou Daocheng requires them to refine at least 2 sets of spirit gathering arrays and 2 sets of first-level lower grade, earth spirit huts, every month. They can buy cultivation resources by selling the spirit stones obtained, and then improve themselves. This can also be regarded as their training, so that they can start to be independent as soon as possible. This also makes Zhou Daocheng quite nostalgic. I remember that when I was in the Zhou family, I would not leave the family to do things until I was 17 or 18 years old, or even over 20 years old. But now, Zhou Daoyuan and Lin Chongshu are only 13 years old, and they can already take on some responsibilities. But the growth of a cultivator is to go through countless rainstorms and finally forge a strong will and mature thinking, rather than staying under protection all year round. The same is true for Zhou Daoshou and Lin Changxi. They did not learn the skills of cultivating immortals, but put all their minds on improving their strength, so they should try their best to hone their skills. Zhou Daocheng had arranged for them to go to the surrounding mountains to hunt monsters that strayed into the formation and hone their fighting skills. Today, Zhou Daocheng finished his daily training and it was still early, so he went to the north to check on their training. Even from a distance, he could hear the roar of the monsters and the sharp sound of the axe chopping bones. Looking through the clouds, in a valley with dense greenery, the brother and sister were holding weapons and fighting a group of first-level middle and lower-grade monster wolves, about 6 or 7 in number, with very good strength. There was already a monster wolf lying on the ground twitching, with a huge hole in its body, and a strong smell of blood floating in the air. Obviously, for the two of them, such a battle was stressful, but they were still at ease for the time being. Lin Changxi's style did not change at all. He still held a giant axe that was longer than his height, mustered up his strength, and chopped it hard. The moment he cut through the air wave lifted the surrounding soil and rocks, and the monster was also chopped away directly. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows at the terrifying power. He could clearly see that Lin Changxi's arms were covered with well-defined muscles, and her body was extremely agile, bursting with explosive power. Moreover, compared with before, Lin Changxi's height had increased a lot, much taller than Zhou Daoshou, with very strong physical fitness, and her strength had reached the 5th level of qi refining. Zhou Daocheng then remembered that this girl was already 15 years old, and she would be an adult in a few years. Now was the time for her to grow taller, and her size and strength were growing very fast. Zhou Daoshou, who was only 13 years old, looked like a child. He followed Lin Changxi and assisted in hunting monsters. As the eldest sister, Lin Changxi took the lead and stood in the front, bearing the greatest pressure, and chopped the monsters away again and again. Zhou Daoshou could be more relaxed, holding a long knife, killing some fish that slipped through the net, and at the same time refining his own swordsmanship. But after just a few seconds of watching, Zhou Daocheng could clearly see that Lin Changxi relied purely on brute force. Although she had some skills, they were not many. She did not rely on her brain to fight, and her physical fitness was simply explosive. This also made Zhou Daocheng very helpless. This was the advantage brought by talent. Lin Changxi's physical fitness was already explosive, and she did not need to think too much when fighting. She could show her good strength by relying on instinct. Zhou Daoshou was completely different. His talent was relatively weak. Whether it was cultivation talent or combat talent, he was actually far inferior to Lin Changxi. In terms of strength alone, the two are 2 years apart. Zhou Daoshou has just broken through to the 4th level of qi refining, and his realm has not yet stabilized. However, Lin Changxi has already reached the 5th level of qi refining, and even his aura has stabilized, almost reaching the middle and late stages of the 5th level of qi refining. It is enough to show that even among the 3 spiritual root monks, Lin Changxi's talent is excellent, even better than Zhou Daocheng's talent. Zhou Daoshou is completely different. His talent is not superior, but relatively poor, but his thinking is mature enough and his brain is relatively easy to use. In the current battle, it seems that he is fishing, but in fact the effect is far greater than imagined. Lin Changxi would often be careless and not notice some subtle attacks, and Zhou Daoshou would secretly stop them to ensure Lin Changxi's safety. Moreover, although the number of his swords is small, each sword is of great value, consumes the least physical strength, exerts great strength, and can easily achieve the target. Compared with the last time, Zhou Daocheng found that Zhou Daoshou's sword skills were more mature. He had his own understanding between each chop, sometimes faster and sometimes slower, fighting at his own pace. On the surface, it was Lin Changxi who stood in the front and shouldered all the pressure. But in fact, as long as a monk with a higher vision can tell at a glance that it is Zhou Daoshou who is grasping the overall situation. Zhou Daocheng nodded secretly. Both of them are good prospects. When they reach the age of 17 or 18 in a few years, they will be able to shoulder the burden of the family and must be the leaders of the new generation. Continuing to turn his attention back to the battle, the demon wolves were almost killed. All the first-level low-grade demon wolves had died tragically on the ground. Only 2 first-level mid-level demon wolves were left. They were still trying their best to resist, staring at the 2 men with fierce eyes. The blood stimulated their nerves even more, and they kept roaring. Of these 2 demonic wolves, the stronger wolf king should have reached the late first-level mid-level, which is equivalent to a 6th-level qi refining monk. The weaker end should be equivalent to the 4th level of qi refining. For the 2 of them, the gap in strength is still quite large. Zhou Daoshou's eyes narrowed. He made a decision immediately, and arranged, "Sister Changxi, let's get rid of the weaker demon wolf together, and then besiege the wolf king." However, when Lin Changxi heard this, he frowned and refused nonchalantly. "The siege is too easy, and you can't practice your combat skills at all. Let's each fight our own way. I also want to see the late first-order mid-level ones. How powerful the monster is." As he said that, he rushed towards the Wolf King without looking back, slashing forward without hesitation, with an indomitable momentum. Zhou Daocheng clearly saw that Zhou Daoshou's face turned green, and the corners of his eyes couldn't help but twitch, but in the end he shook his head helplessly. Although he is also a relatively independent person, it is obvious that his opinions are not very effective in front of Lin Changxi. So according to Lin Changxi's idea, one person was assigned a demon wolf to fight on his own. Lin Changxi was obviously still very stressed when she faced off against the stronger Wolf King. She was dodged several times in a row, which took a lot of effort. It didn't take long for her to start panting. However, it was impossible for the Wolf King to dodge every one of her axes. If he was struck once, he would be seriously injured. Zhou Daoshou, on the other hand, fought steadily, mainly focusing on defense, slashing at vital points without warning. The battle rhythm was not fast, but the suppressive power was still obvious. If we follow this pace, it will only be a matter of time before we kill these 2 monsters. However, as an outsider, Zhou Daocheng frowned when he saw the changes on the battlefield. These 2 children still suffered from their inexperience. Wolf monsters, especially those who serve as wolf kings, are much smarter than monsters of the same level, and they are also very clever in planning the battle situation. If you underestimate the enemy, there may be bad results. Just like in front of him, Zhou Daocheng could clearly see that the wolf king monster was constantly approaching Zhou Daoshou during the battle, and its intention was self-evident. Human monks know how to besiege weaker monsters first, and this monster wolf also knows it, and has even put in the practice. When the distance was close enough, the Wolf King instantly found an opportunity, got rid of the entanglement with Lin Changxi, and rushed towards the weaker Zhou Daoshou in an instant. "Be careful, Taoist cultivator." Lin Changxi immediately noticed something was wrong and hurriedly warned him. But at this time, it was completely too late. Even though she rushed forward quickly and tried to stop the Wolf King's attack, it had no effect. The Wolf King's purpose was extremely clear and he didn't even look at her. Zhou Daoshou also secretly had a bad idea. His brows were furrowed, beads of sweat broke out on his forehead, and his attention was completely devoted to the battle, thinking quickly about how to break the situation. But the more tense the situation became, the more stable Zhou Daoshou seemed to be. He thought of a way to deal with it in an instant. He kicked the weaker demon wolf away with his feet, then rolled backwards away from the Wolf King, making space to block with his knife. At the critical moment, he blocked the Wolf King's fatal blow. A series of actions, which took place in just an instant, immediately turned the tide of the battle and eliminated the fatal danger. Even Zhou Daocheng, who was watching from the sidelines, was so frightened that he broke into a cold sweat. Even he couldn't help but admire such an experienced ability to adapt to the situation. At that time, Lin Chengxi also arrived in time, and with a powerful axe, he cut off half of the Wolf King's head, completely ending its life. Finally, another axe blow killed another demon wolf, ending the battle. What a dangerous situation. I didn't expect this Wolf King to run towards you. Fortunately, we reacted quickly. Lin Chengxi patted his chest, also quite scared. Zhou Daoshou even rolled his eyes. He was the one who was really afraid. Ahem. Seeing that the battle was over, Zhou Daocheng also walked out of the clouds and mist behind. Lin Chengxi was extremely alert and swung his axe without hesitation, but was easily blocked when he reached Zhou Daocheng. Hey, big brother, you're here. Sixth brother. After seeing the appearance of the person, the two of them let down their guard and greeted each other. Zhou Daocheng glanced at the two of them, but this time he did not reprimand them. Instead, he threw a chi-boosting pill to each of them to help them recover their strength, and praised them by the way. You performed well. The two of them fought against a whole pack of demon wolves and were able to defeat them almost without any injuries. It seems that they have worked hard during this period. Hearing this, Lin Chengxi's mouth was grinning, but he didn't smile for a few seconds, and then he frowned again and said, in fact, there are still many shortcomings. I didn't stop the Wolf King, and Daoshou was almost injured. It doesn't matter. It's also my poor observation of the battlefield. Zhou Daoshou regained his composure and said calmly. Zhou Daocheng nodded. Although the process was not perfect and some accidents occurred in the later stage, he had to admit that the two were very capable. At least among the same level, there should be very few cultivators who can achieve this level. If you know you are wrong, you must correct it. It is better to find problems when hunting monsters than when fighting the enemy. Go back and think about your own problems and pay attention in the future. Zhou Daocheng said calmly that as these children grew up, he was no longer as strict as he was when he was a child. Because growth is not about scolding, but about constantly experiencing hardships, going through setbacks, and growing up step by step. In fact, Zhou Daocheng could see the shortcomings of the two of them at a glance. Lin Chengxi is highly talented and powerful, and has the best combat power among his peers. Unfortunately, he has a proud personality and is prone to recklessness. Zhou Daoshou, on the other hand, is too restrained, steady, tepid, lacks killing power and ruthlessness, and he always likes to hide something, and rarely fully unleashes his combat power and wisdom. Whether it was good or bad, Zhou Daocheng did not deliberately mention it, intending to let the two people experience it on their own. When they truly discover themselves, it is also the time when they can make corrections. Next, the two did not return directly to the spiritual medicine garden, but simply packed up some monster materials, then went to Wugufeng City to sell them in exchange for spiritual stones, and bought some cultivation elixirs. This is their daily life, which is not much different from ordinary monks. They hunt monsters in exchange for spiritual stones. As they grow older, Zhou Daocheng has begun to reduce the supply to them and try to make them self-reliant. Zhou Daoyuan and his two men relied on formations for a living, while Zhou Daoshou and his two men made a living by hunting monsters. Of course, Zhou Daocheng sometimes provides some precious cultivation resources, such as spiritual honey, spiritual liquid, cultivation elixirs, etc., to help them lay a solid foundation. However, they need to provide supplies for daily life and cultivation by themselves. After doing this, Zhou Daocheng took them back to the elixir garden, and it happened to be lunchtime. In order to enhance his relationship, he would often eat and live with his children. Fresh spiritual rice contains rich spiritual energy and is already delicious after simple cooking. The white-scaled sea bass taken out of the ice house only had a slight fishy smell, but after being mixed with the spiritual liquid and steamed, it was only sweet and plump. In addition, one white yuling egg per person and a few plates of pickled side dishes are a rich lunch. Even among many foundation building forces, this is considered a luxury and requires a lot of spiritual stones, especially the first order high-grade white-scaled base and spiritual eggs, which are not cheap. However, Zhou Daocheng is not stingy at all. After all, these children are still in the growth stage and cannot be treated badly. And for this lunch, in addition to him and the 4 children, his eldest brother Zhou Daobai and Zhao Yunji also happened to come back and had dinner together. The curls of smoke drifting between the mountains also add a breath of life to this vast wilderness. Since leaving Tianqi Mountain, Zhou Daocheng has not felt the taste of home for a long time, but after settling in Wugu in recent years, everything seems to be on the right track. Especially such a peaceful life allowed him to see the bright future of the Zhou family. It would not take hundreds of years, perhaps only a dozen years, for the Zhou family to develop sufficiently strong. It even surpassed the previous Zhou family and became a larger and more powerful family. However, in such a peaceful life, there are still many things to be busy with. Not long after lunch, when Zhou Daocheng was checking the purple spirit bamboo in the spiritual field, news suddenly came from the communication stone. Zhou Daocheng glanced at it and saw that it was a message from the leader of the spirit snake sect. He was already in Wugyufang City at this time, and he had some matters to discuss regarding the relocation of the spirit snake sect. Zhou Daocheng thought for a moment, then put down what he was doing and hurried over. Although he very much likes the peaceful cultivation life, practicing, farming, teaching children every day, and living the life of an ordinary monk. It's a pity that for him, there are still more important things to deal with, especially in the face of the chaos of the overall situation. Only by ensuring the safety of Foggy Valley can this peaceful life continue. Arriving at Wugyufang City, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect was already waiting in the private room on the second floor of Tianqi Shanju. Due to the relationship between the two of them, they went directly to the topic without too many pleasantries. Our Spirit Snake sect has made preparations. The disciples are already on their way. In about 3.5 months, they will all arrive at the poisonous insect swamp. However, there are still some things that need to be troubled, little friend. Zhou Daocheng nodded, a little surprised at the other party's speed. He didn't expect to set off so quickly. It seemed that the leader of the Spirit Snake sect was indeed in a hurry. Fellow Taoist Qin, if you need any help, just tell me. Qin Chengyu was not polite, took a sip of tea, and said, first of all, the situation next to the 100 insects poison marsh. Although the spiritual vein I chose has not completely entered the range of the 100 insect poison marsh, there are still many people around. I might have to ask my friends to help me clean up the monsters. Approximately how many heads are there? How many monks are needed? Zhou Daocheng asked. Qin Chengyu said, I went to check. There should be 2 second-order monsters, both of which are low-grade second-order monsters. There are also a large number of late-stage qi refining monsters. Their strength is neither weak nor very strong. As for the foundation-building monks, I have handed over the Blackwater spirit snakes and spirit swallowing ants to the elders to escort the disciples to move to avoid accidents on the road, so I am the only foundation-building monk here, and he may need help from my friends. Quote. Zhou Daocheng nodded. There was no problem with the arrangement made by the leader of the spirit snake sect. He left most of his combat power to his disciples to ensure safety on the road. This was the most important thing. After all, monks are the foundation. If a lot of damage occurs, then even if the migration is successful, there will be heavy losses. After thinking for a moment, Zhou Daocheng said, in this case, I will send 2 foundation-building experts here, plus 5 full hunting teams of 10 people to clean up the first-order monsters. What do you think, fellow Taoist Qin? Qin Chengyu's eyes lit up, and he was a little surprised by Zhou Daocheng's generosity, and he attacked 2 strong foundation builders. He did not think that Zhou Daocheng would transfer all the foundation-building monks regardless of the safety of Wugyufang City. Since he could send 2 foundation-building monks, it at least meant that Wugyufang had at least 1 strong foundation-building expert. This level of strength is already comparable to that of the Spirit Snake sect. That's very good. I won't let you suffer, little friend. When the matter is over, I will give you a big gift. Zhou Daocheng smiled and waved his hand, saying, there is no need for generous gifts, but I do need the monster materials. That's natural. Whether it's the second-order monster material or the first-order monster material, I can just take it. In addition, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect decisively agreed, then paused and said, in addition, I also need a batch of Earth Spirit huts. They don't need to be of high quality, just low-grade ones. Zhou Daocheng thought for a while and found that it was not difficult to make a first-level low-grade, Tuling Shaosh, so he directly agreed. After all, the Spirit Snake sect monks had no place to live, either during the journey or after arriving at the Spirit Vein, so the demand for the Tuling cottage was definitely not small. Afterwards, the two discussed some other issues, such as the supply of Lingu elixir and talismans, and Zhou Daocheng agreed to them one by one. These are not troublesome things, but they are relatively cumbersome. After all, the migration of an entire sect will involve many aspects. The Lingxi sect has the courage to migrate the entire sect, which is largely due to the confidence given by Wugu. Otherwise, it would never be so anxious and would definitely make longer preparations. Zhou Daocheng also gave enough face to this old ally and provided all the needs. Of course, Qin Chengyu did not let Zhou Daocheng suffer a loss. He directly paid 20,000 spiritual stones first and gave Zhou Daocheng a batch of array materials. Because the entire sect was relocated, the resources around the sect must have been mined out, so a large number of materials were harvested. Among them, the main materials are Jin Jie Tai Shi, Zhu Lin Zhu, and Huo Lang Shi, and they are all the materials Zhou Daocheng needs. The Lingxi sect itself does not need these materials, so all of them were given to Zhou Daocheng, which is also full of generosity. Zhou Daocheng knew that if these materials were sold in the market, they could sell for at least tens of thousands of spirit stones, which was worth a lot of money. However, since Qin Chengyu chose to give these materials to Zhou Daocheng, it was also a way to express goodwill and gratitude, hoping to bind the relationship between the two sides and make it stronger. After all, they have chosen to move the entire sect here, and to a certain extent, they have made up their minds to form a complete alliance with Wugu and develop together to deal with the chaos that will follow. Therefore, it is necessary to further deepen the connection, make the relationship between each other closer, and prepare for the next cooperation. Zhou Daocheng also understood that any force that wants to develop for a long time cannot do without one or two reliable allies. Otherwise, it will be like the Zhou family in the past, which seemed to be strong, but after encountering calculations, there was no room for resistance and it was directly facing destruction. If there was an ally at that time, the situation would be very different. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng was also very concerned about this cooperation, and almost mobilized the entire Wugu to help the Spirit Snake sect. First, after Zhou Daocheng finished the conversation, he arranged for the leader of the Spirit Snake sect to stay, and then he went into a short retreat and quickly refined a batch of first-grade inferior, Earth Spirit houses. This is the most important thing at the moment. After the leader of the Spirit Snake sect handed over the Earth Spirit houses to his disciples and ensured safety on the way, he could start to consider hunting monsters and clearing the spirit veins. This process was very fast. Zhou Daocheng spent 10 days to refine more than 30 sets of first-grade inferior, Earth Spirit houses, plus some inventory in the warehouse, to make up enough for the leader of the Spirit Snake sect. Then the leader of the Spirit Snake sect hurried on the road at the fastest speed and sent the Earth Spirit house back. When he came back next time, only 7 days had passed, and he was likely to use talismans or magic tools to travel. Immediately afterwards, the Fog Valley began to operate quickly and prepare for various matters to clear the monsters. Especially for the preparation of the foundation building strongman, Zhou Daocheng planned to arrange for himself and Xie Zhouhei to participate, and his eldest brother Zhou Daobai to guard the Fog Valley. On the one hand, the eldest brother Zhou Daobai is his own man after all, and the relationship is closer than Xie Zhouhei, so it is definitely more reassuring to stay. On the other hand, it is actually for Xie Zhouhei's sake. As a casual cultivator, he is not proficient in any immortal cultivation skills, and he rarely goes out to hunt monsters, so he doesn't have many opportunities to obtain spirit stones. So taking him out often can also allocate some gains to him, such as the last time he went to Hualongmen, he was allocated 5,000 spirit stones, which is definitely a full care. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng arranged for him to fight, and Xie Zhouhei agreed immediately without any hesitation. In addition to the foundation building combat power, the combat power of the hunting team in the Qi refining period, as well as the logistical preparations, are also being prepared in a tense atmosphere. The 5 hunting teams are all prohibited from going out in the near future, and they are fully resting and preparing for the next battle. Shaodan Pavilion and the Wang family also urgently provided a batch of elixirs and talismans, but because this operation was not for the Fog Valley, they did not need to participate, and there was no need to provide elixirs and talismans. Therefore, these pills and talismans are not free. However, for Zhou Daocheng's sake, they are all sold at very low prices. And it was thanks to the Wang family that the previous incident with the Fire Dragon Gate ended the hatred of extermination, and the Wang family was extremely grateful, and even grateful. Because of the study of talismans, the relationship with Zhou Daocheng became closer, so the talismans were sold almost at cost price. In this way, Shaodan Pavilion naturally did not dare to raise the price and also sold at cost price. This reduced the cost of clearing monsters a lot, and also alleviated the pressure on the leader of the Spirit Snake sect to a certain extent. Finally, the Zhou family also provided the powerful second-level magic weapon, the giant ridge bow, which increased the weight again. After half a month of preparation, the Fog Valley market prepared everything with extremely high efficiency. The team went to the 100 Insects Poison Swamp in a mighty manner, which also attracted the attention of many casual cultivators. After learning that it was a cooperation between Fog Valley and the Spirit Snake sect, they all talked endlessly. The cooperation of the two powerful forces brought about a huge publicity effect, making the reputation of the Spirit Snake sect even more famous and the position of Fog Valley even more stable. When the experienced casual cultivators saw this scene, they couldn't help but sigh. In just a few years, Fog Valley Market has completely established its foothold. It seems that Baihei Market has completely lost in the competition. Someone also asked curiously, "Why do you say that? I heard that the two major markets have signed an agreement not to invade each other and coexist peacefully. They can coexist together." Ha ha ha, young man, your idea is too naive. Where is the real peaceful coexistence? How can a fixed area support two huge markets? Baihei Market should also decline. Many people can actually see this point. Baihei Market may not disappear directly, but its scale will certainly shrink gradually, and its competitiveness will be greatly insufficient. Especially in the current situation, the five major forces in Baihei Market have suffered heavy losses and are no longer as brave as they used to be, while Wugu's strength is increasing day by day, and there are powerful allies to help. As one grows, the other grows, and the gap between the two sides has already appeared. But everyone doesn't know that the decline of Baihei Market has long been a foregone conclusion, because even the Disha sect has reached a cooperation with Wugu. From now on, the situation is no longer a competition between Baihei Market and Wugu Market. Instead, it is the cooperation and competition between the three major foundation-building forces of Disha sect, Wugu, and Lingxi sect. Moreover, these three parties all have more than 3 foundation-building masters, and their strength and foundation are extremely strong, which has more than doubled the overall strength of the surrounding generation. Zhou Daocheng did not care about the discussions of the people around him, and followed the team calmly, officially heading to the 100 Insects Poison Swamp. Along the way, it can be clearly seen that the environment is becoming more humid and harsh, the rolling mountains gradually reduce, and most of them turn into dense and gloomy forests. At the same time, a large number of poisonous elixirs and monsters begin to appear. The environment here is completely different from the Foggy Valley Mountains. There are many unfamiliar dangers, but there are also many precious natural materials and treasures that are not found around Foggy Valley. Crisis and opportunity coexist. Moreover, this area is very similar to the Foggy Valley in the past. It is an area that has never been explored by monks. It is full of uninhabited primeval forests and swamps, and few monks come. Therefore, in addition to determining the location of the destination, everyone also needs to open up a road in the wild jungle like a wasteland. During the journey of more than 10 days, the team fell into dangerous swamps many times. If there were no strong foundation builders to rescue them, they might have collapsed halfway. Moreover, there are a large number of poisonous insects and snakes hiding in the dark, various miasmas floating in the air, and poisonous powders released by flowers and herbs, which can cause poisoning if you are not careful. If it can be detoxified by detoxification pills, that's it, but there are some strange poisons that can cause permanent damage to the body, and some are even fatal. So along the way, the group of people had been frightened. But the only good thing is that I hunted 2 second-level pythons earlier and harvested 2 gallbladders for detoxification, which happened to be refined into detoxification pills by the Little Pill Pavilion, and they happened to be used this time. This journey took nearly a month and a half, and finally we arrived near the 100 Insect Poison Swamp and found the spiritual vein chosen by the leader of the Spirit Snake sect. Looking from a distance, you can only see the vast dark green wild jungle. The jungle is shrouded in thick fog, eerie and terrifying. Withered trees and vines intertwined together, as if they were dragging the entire world into the abyss. The occasional roar of monsters makes the atmosphere here even more terrifying. In such an environment, there is a relatively tall mountain surrounded by it, exuding wisps of spiritual energy, which should be the target this time. Zhou Daocheng just took one look and felt the vicious environment here. If ordinary people lived here, they would be under strong psychological pressure in just a few days, and loneliness and fear would be born in their hearts. He couldn't help but said, "Fellow Taoist Qin, the environment here is so harsh and humid. Do you really want to move the sect here?" The leader of the Spirit Snake sect smiled and said confidently, "Of course, there will be chaos and fights in the Qingshan sect in the future. If I move the sect here, I will definitely be able to stay away from the war and live in a safe place. Moreover, the environment here is indeed very good. There are a lot of precious natural materials and treasures, and there are also a lot of monster resources. It is also very close to your Foggy Valley, so it is very suitable for future development." Zhou Daocheng understood that the reason why the leader of the Spirit Snake sect went to great lengths to move here was actually to avoid the war and to develop in the wilderness in peace and peace of mind. In this case, he really can't say much, because aside from the danger, other conditions here are indeed good. Even from a long distance, you can feel the rich spiritual energy, which is most likely a second-order high-grade spiritual vein. Moreover, there is a high probability that the monsters occupying this place are only second-order low-grade ones, otherwise the leader of the Spirit Snake sect would not choose to clean up this place. Fellow Taoist Qin, what are you going to do next? Are you going to go directly into the mountain to clean up the monsters, or do you have other plans? Zhou Daocheng asked. The leader of the Spirit Snake sect took stock of the environment in front of him and arranged, "Don't worry, there are a lot of poisons in it. It may be dangerous to enter rashly. I have to make some preparations first." After finishing speaking, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect took out a lot of hay. It looked dry and nothing special, and exuded a faint bitter smell. It should be the appearance of some kind of insect-repellent elixir after it has been dried in the sun. Finally, he took out a magical instrument similar to a pipe, stuffed it with dry grass, and after lighting it, a large amount of rich smoke immediately came out. The smoke was light yellow in color and had an extremely unpleasant smell. It only spread slightly into the surrounding air. Monk Wugu couldn't help but frown after smelling it. But the effect of this kind of hay was very good. After only a dozen breaths, I saw a large number of poisonous insects and monsters escaping from the mountains in a panic, without even the slightest hesitation. Zhou Daocheng was also quite surprised. The quality of this elixir should reach the second level. Most of the monsters couldn't bear it and ran away immediately. The effect was surprisingly good. After smoking in one direction, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect went to the back of the mountain range where the spiritual veins were located, painfully took out a handful of hay again, and smoked the backside as well. This was repeated 4 times, and smoke was carried out all around the mountain, almost driving out most of the monsters. Only then did Qin Chengyu stop his movements. That's almost it. Most of the monsters and poisonous insects should leave here. It should be more troublesome for the monsters who still stay here. Zhou Daocheng nodded and asked, "Fellow Taoist Qin, do you know what kind of second-level monster here is?" It didn't react at all under such smoke and fire. The leader of the Spirit Snake sect smiled and explained, "It's normal. This kind of elixir hay is very special. First-level monsters have no resistance and will run away as soon as they smell it. However, it has almost no effect on second-order monsters." Quote, "I see, there should be only level 2 monsters left now." The leader of the Spirit Snake sect hesitated for a moment, and then said, "There is no absolute in everything. We can only confirm that most of them have been expelled. There may also be some deeply hidden or extremely special first-order monsters that still need special attention." Zhou Daocheng nodded, indicating that he had an idea in mind, and then began to arrange the team to enter the mountain. No matter what the situation is, it can only be known after investigation, and with 3 foundation building masters in charge, even if there is danger, it can be resolved. Moreover, with a large number of first-level monsters driven away, relying on the strength of the 5 fully staffed hunting teams in Wugu, it is easy to clear the remaining first-level monsters. The only thing to worry about is that the captains of 3 of the hunting teams are temporarily transferred to the guard team captains, and it is unknown how they can lead the team. Because the original captains of these 3 hunting teams have gone to the Yin Gathering Land to practice, and they should not be able to return in a short time, so they can only borrow people from the guard team. The usual training of the hunting team and the guard team is different, and the focus is also very different. The hunting team mainly focuses on finding monsters, excreting monsters, hunting in groups, and then besieging and killing monsters, while the usual training content of the guard team is mainly to besiege monks, which is still a big difference. However, after all, they are all powerful warriors at the 9th level of Qi refining. As long as there is not too much danger, they should be able to adapt. Zhou Daocheng, Xie Zhouhei, and the leader of the Spirit Snake sect immediately determined the location of the 2 second-level monsters. According to the direction of the spiritual vein, the 3 immediately felt the aura of 2 second-level monsters at the head and tail of the spiritual vein. They were very heavy and powerful, and their strength should be strong. The leader of the Spirit Snake sect was experienced and immediately guessed the types of the 2 monsters based on the surrounding environment and the remaining signs of life. The one closer to us is slightly weaker. It should be a poisonous lizard. Let's get rid of it first, and it should be easier later. You should remind your monks to try not to get close to the area at the tail of the spiritual vein. The second-level monster over there should be stronger. Don't lure it out first. Zhou Daocheng agreed, and after making arrangements, he officially began to besiege the second-level monster. In fact, when everyone approached this spiritual vein, this second-level monster had already discovered it, but had been hiding in the cave, waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. However, sensing the approach of the strong man, the lizard knew that it had been exposed, so it stopped hiding. A sinister roar sounded, and a dark green lizard covered with rotten moss quickly emerged from a green pool. Corrupted poison armored lizard. The leader of the Spirit Snake sect immediately recognized the species of the monster, and then reminded, "My friend, the carapace of this monster is very special. It is not only extremely hard to break, but once the carapace is attacked, it will also release corrosive toxins." Zhou Daocheng's eyes flickered, and he said, "I understand, I know. Since you can't attack the carapace, try to avoid it and attack its head and abdomen instead." Zhou Daocheng took the lead and set up the spirit puppet array, and immediately 2 huge and terrifying demon snake spirit puppets appeared, the spotted viper and the black-eyed ghost scale snake. As soon as they appeared, they blocked the front with their huge bodies, facing a corrupt poisonous armored lizard head-on, and showed extremely strong combat power. The body of the spirit puppet is made of black puppet wood, which is extremely hard and tough, and it is used in large quantities. It wraps the snake body layer by layer to form an extremely tight skin and muscles. And it is also blessed by the formation, which is not inferior to the second-level monster. With the original spirit, it has good wisdom and fighting instincts, and immediately suppressed this lizard with not weak strength. Zhou Daocheng estimated that this rotten armored lizard had just broken through the second level, which is equivalent to the strength of the first level of foundation building. Under the siege of 2 spirit puppets, it was extremely difficult to fight. And there is a very important point: the spirit puppet is not afraid of poison. They have no vitality, no feeling of pain, and no need to breathe, so the most powerful trump card of the rotten armored lizard is useless here. It can only rely on corrosiveness to create some pits and bumps on the bodies of the 2 spirit puppets. Seeing this scene, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect was also quite surprised and extremely shocked by Zhou Daocheng's means. He was able to summon 2 puppets with foundation building strength by relying on the formation. This method almost overturned his understanding of the formation magician. He was quite knowledgeable, but he had never seen a similar formation method. Originally, he planned to lead the battle himself and let Zhou Daocheng and the other 2 assist him, but looking at the current situation, Zhou Daocheng seemed to be able to take down this second-level monster by himself. However, in order to end the battle as soon as possible, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect did not choose to stand by and watch, but was looking for an opportunity to give the corrupted poison armor lizard a fatal blow. At this moment, the leader of the Spirit Snake sect held a second-level magic weapon in his hand, which was a spear wrapped with a black python. The aura was sharp and powerful, which made people shudder. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but take a few more glances. He clearly remembered that the magic weapon used by the leader of the Spirit Snake sect before was not this one. It should be that the previous one was destroyed in the battle, so he replaced it with a new one. Retracting his gaze, Zhou Daocheng continued to control the spirit puppet to fight. After reaching the foundation building stage, the spiritual energy is transformed into true energy. Not only is the quality higher, but the amount of true energy has also become extremely large, making him more handy in controlling the formation. The 2 giant snake puppets were extremely agile. Zhou Daocheng controlled the spotted viper, while the black-eyed ghost-scaled snake fought independently. With their cooperation, their combat effectiveness was extremely impressive. It only took a cup of tea to directly entangle the poisonous armored lizard, exposing a fatal flaw. The leader of the Spirit Snake sect raised his eyes and immediately seized this opportunity. He quickly shot out his spear like a dragon, and the long spear cut through the air, carrying a sharp momentum, and instantly rushed towards the poisonous armored lizard. In the blink of an eye, the long spear wrapped with the black python directly pierced the head of the lizard monster. With a flick of the wrist, the powerful force picked it apart, and the red and white colors scattered all over the ground. The long spear was retracted, and the poisonous armored lizard had gradually lost its life. It collapsed to the ground unwillingly and gradually closed its eyes. Zhou Daocheng saw this scene and couldn't help but widen his eyes and sighed, "What a strong strength." Based on the attack just now, the strength of the leader of the Spirit Snake sect is conservatively estimated to reach the 3rd level of foundation building, and it is likely not worse than Lin Xiaoyuan. As expected of the Lord of Fog Valley, the power of the formation is so strong that you can suppress this monster with just one person. It seems that your strength has improved a lot over the years. Beside the monster's corpse, Qin Chengyu looked at Zhou Daocheng and said with a little admiration. Zhou Daocheng took out the jade bottle and began to collect the essence of the poisonous armored lizard. He waved his hand and smiled, "Fellow Taoist Qin, you are too kind. Your strength is really strong. You killed a 2nd-level monster with one blow. You should be close to the 4th level of foundation building, right? It's still a little bit worse, but I have experienced a lot of battles over the years, and my strength has improved slightly." The two of them had a simple conversation and had a very good relationship with each other. They were much more relaxed than when they were in contact with Lin Xiaoyuan. "My little friend, do you need to take a rest? The aura of the other 2nd-level monster is not weak. It should be able to reach the level of the 3rd level of foundation building. I just need to be careful." Zhou Daocheng thought for a moment, and although the consumption was not huge, just in case, he still recovered all his spiritual energy before heading to another monster's lair. When the 3 of them arrived, they saw a huge ice blue toad with disgusting pimples all over its body, running out of the spiritual veins. Zhou Daocheng's eyes suddenly lit up and he immediately recognized this monster. He said in surprise, "Frost poison toad. This is an extremely rare monster called the frost poison toad. It is a poisonous toad with ice properties. It is extremely powerful and very dangerous. If attacked by its frost poison, it will immediately poison the bone marrow and damage the meridians. He will die in pain in a short time. If you can die directly, it may be a good result. What is even more frightening is that someone can suppress this poison with strong strength. However, because the frost poison cannot be completely eliminated, it remains in the meridians, making it impossible to practice, and it will be corroded by frost poison all year round, making life worse than death. But while it is dangerous, this rare monster also has great value. This rare monster also has great value. This rare monster